Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live stream challenging Dr. Chaffee's Carnivore Diet. I'm excited. I'm fired up for this one. So Dr. Chaffee should be jumping on here with us in just a minute. Today, we're tackling fears and arguments and reasons why you were scared to start the carnivore diet. For example, I've often heard my entire life that vegetables are vital. You got to have your vegetables. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. If you eat too much meat, it's going to clog your arteries. It's going to kill you. Lots of scary stuff we've been told our entire lives, and lots of things that caused me to pause when starting carnivore diet. It's a scary thing. Doing carnivore, you have to be pretty brave because you're basically going up against everything you've ever been told. And a lot of times that fear comes from misunderstanding or not having the facts or the truth. So the purpose of this video, and Dr. Chaffee and I have done a couple of videos like this now. It's been a lot of fun. Purpose of these videos is to break down those myths, answer the tough questions, overcome the fear, looking at the facts, trying to get to the truth. So the other thing I would suggest as well is don't just listen to us and don't just do this. Do your own research. There's so much great information out there. Check out Dr. Chaffee's channel for sure. If you haven't subscribed to that yet, you certainly should. He's got so many great videos on carnivore diet. One of his best, I'd really suggest, especially if you're new to carnivore and this is your first entry into it, is his video. It's titled Carnivore for Beginners, How to Start a Carnivore Diet with Tips and Tricks. It's an excellent video. It has nearly 500,000 views. And this is just free information. So I always encourage people. So many people have been commenting on my YouTube videos lately, and they're saying, I'm going to start carnivore right now. I'm going to go buy a steak right now. And I'm like, no, don't do that. You have to know your why for starting carnivore. And it has to be a powerful why. And then you have to know your how. How are you going to do it? It's not just going out and buying some ground beef and steaks and eating it. There's certain things that you have to account for, and you got to do it right, and you got to understand it, and you got to make the decision for yourself before you just jump on and do it. And it's free information at our fingertips. I wish I had the resources that are available now 20 years ago. I wish I had Dr. Chaffee's videos 20 years ago. It would have changed my life forever. So strongly encourage everyone to check out Dr. Chaffee's channel. I've got it's listed in the description below, and it's down there on the bottom of the screen as well. And so I'm excited for this. I'm fired up. We did a couple other videos in this series, so if you guys haven't watched those yet, check it out. And Dr. Chaffee should be joining us here any second now. I just want to give a huge shout out to him. He is such a generous person. We need more doctors like Dr. Chaffee. We have to elevate Dr. Chaffee's message, Dr. Barry's message, Dr. Baker's message, or we're never going to have more doctors like them. He's been, a lot of you have probably heard of my new friend, Bill, and his story. It's just amazing. 700 pounds from Alaska. He's been doing carnivore. Today's his day 11. He's thriving. You can already see some of his face changing. If you guys haven't heard this story, you got to check out my channel and see. I did a whole video, and then you got to go check out Bill's channel. He couldn't afford meat, and he lives in Alaska, and he's 700 pounds. He hasn't left his house in 4 years, and he's on carnivore for 11 days now. And the goal is to get him in our carnivore diet documentary we're putting together. That's on the bottom of the screen. We need all the help we can get with that. So this is a crowd-funded documentary, and I may be flying out to see Bill shortly. I'm going to decide here in the next day or two. So more to come on that very soon. But I was just going to say, there's Dr. Chaffee now. Dr. Chaffee, I was telling people a quick update about Bill. And I was telling people how important it is that we elevate people like Dr. Chaffee, because I wish there were doctors like you. I keep showing people this. I got it on my desk here, but all of these doctors failed me, and I've had so many things that are 100 times better on carnivore diet. I just wish I found it earlier. So it's really important that we give credit where due. And I wanted to thank you, Dr. Chaffee, for being so generous with your time and
no, you're fine.
helping with Bill too. So this thing with Bill, I was just telling everyone, give him a quick update. Dr. Chaffee, he's on day 11 right now. He's just doing awesome. It's
nice.
700 pounds, and he's going to be in the Carnivore Diet movie. And I'm thinking about maybe flying out there in the next day or two. So but you were so generous, and you were like, if he needs any help, just I'll have a private phone call with him and help him. And I really appreciate that. And Bill really appreciates it. And it's awesome what you're doing. So I was just telling everybody, go to Dr. Chaffee's channel, subscribe. We have to elevate doctors like Dr. Chaffee. We need more doctors in the world like this. So Dr. Chaffee, I kind of went through the intro, and basically there's a lot of scary stuff out there that stops people from starting carnivore. But when you get to the facts of it, you can get over the fear and then start it. And that's kind of the purpose of this video. Dr. Chaffee and I have done a couple of videos like this. So Dr. Chaffee, I mean, maybe just to kick things off, if you wouldn't mind, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I'm an American physician. I work in Australia at the moment. So I'm in a residency for neurosurgery. I also have a private practice in functional medicine and metabolic health. And I've just done a lot of research into diet and nutrition, how that affects health and chronic disease. And I've found that is one of the best tools that I've found to help my patients get better and not need surgery in the future and not need a whole bunch of medications now.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll just do myself here real quick. So my name's Kerry. I've been carnivore for 134 days. Today's day 46 on the Lion diet. Carnivore has completely changed my life forever. I'm 2 pounds shy of being down 100 pounds since my heaviest. I overcame depression, anxiety, IBS. I would stop breathing about 400 times throughout the night. I had a CPAP machine strapped around my face every night just to breathe because of the food I was eating. And all of that's gone now. For the first time in my life, I feel like a natural human being, like a human should feel. And I guess the other big thing about me is I'm on a mission right now. It's my new purpose and goal in life is to share examples of carnivore diet. So we're putting together the Carnivore Diet documentary. I talked about Bill earlier. He's going to be in there. And after he's been stuck in his house for 4 years. And if the goal is to show Bill right now, I'm actually probably going to be flying out there in the next couple of days to start filming with him. So it's really exciting. But we need more participants too. So if you're interested in sharing your carnivore example, it's not just obesity, it's diabetes, mental health issues, aging, women's health, all of those things. We want to share those examples over the course of 1 year on the carnivore diet. We're not telling people, hey, you should do the carnivore diet or you should eat this way. It's just look at all these examples, use your own 2 eyes, and then decide what you want to do. And I think it's so important to share all of these examples. It's what inspired me to get started on carnivore diet. So yeah, with that said, should we jump right into some of these questions? I have we've done these videos before, Dr. Chaffee and I have, so check some of those out. Go to Dr. Chaffee's channel and check some of the past ones out. They're so good. You were knocking them out of the park. And we have more questions we didn't get to last time that people have submitted. And I keep saying questions. They're more so arguments against carnivore diet. I want to start carnivore diet, but I'm scared because it's going to clog my arteries. I'm going to die of a heart attack or whatever the reason may be. So we have some of those here, but if you guys have any of your own, please leave them in the comments. If you have a question, you can put a little Q in front of it. And I was just saying earlier, if you have a fear, a carnivore fear, maybe put a big F in front of it, and then we'll be able to catch it quickly. But we've got some right here. So what do you say, Dr. Chaffee? Should we just jump into some of these?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, here's one. And now most of these are new. We've covered some really good ones before. This one I wanted to cover though, because a lot of times there's new people on here. We've touched on a little bit of this before. So per Cleveland Clinic, the carnivore diet's high saturated fat content raises LDL cholesterol, something a lot of people were worried about, increasing heart disease risk. It's low in essential nutrients and can cause health issues long-term.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that they say it's low in essential nutrients. I wonder which ones, they're talking about. Is that the arsenic or the cyanide or the, sulforaphane and, what's oxalates and things like that. No, you're not missing anything. Absolutely not anything. How do we know this? Because the Inuit exist, right? So they eat just meat and they don't have anything else. People say that, well, the Maasai, they eat this and the other, and you go there and actually they don't. There are some who do, and the ones living traditionally, they really don't eat really any plant material. And then different, the Nanette and other populations, the Australian Aboriginals and their native, sort of civilization, they really just ate meat, and they may have eaten plants when they had to, and certainly when they were introduced by Westerners. But left to their own devices, they really weren't eating meat unless really weren't eating plants unless they had to. So there's nothing that you're missing. We know that because there are people that only eat meat throughout their entire life. We have entire civilizations and cultures that only eat meat throughout their entire existence, generation after generation, and they are actually extraordinarily healthy, lean, strong, fit individuals, great microbiome. They also don't get heart disease. That is the disease of the West. That was used to be called the disease of the West. Now it's just getting older. Now everyone gets heart disease, and we don't think about that. We don't think about the fact that the first heart attack, person who died of a heart attack and proven on autopsy to have done so was in around 1910 in America. We don't look at that. We don't realize that then they thought, no, you got it wrong. You saw something, you didn't see what you said you did. That's a lie. 10 years later, they started having more and more of these people dying from this weird thing that they'd never seen before. And they've been doing autopsies for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, really. And yet this is the first time they've seen that. And 10 years after that, it's the number one killer in America. Why is that? It came out of nowhere. So it certainly wasn't the meat we were eating, because we're actually eating more meat in the 1800s than we were in the 1900s, and certainly in the 1920s and 30s when those levels spiked up. That was actually a trough. We're eating the least amount of meat in the 20s and 30s in America that we'd eaten in 200 years, right? And so obviously that's not the case. Saturated fat. Well, Cleveland Clinic is great. It's a wonderful institution, but they don't get everything right every time. And the Journal of the American College of Cardiology published in 2020 a massive literature review looking at all the best studies and meta-analyses and the randomized controlled trials and all these different sorts of things. And they found absolutely no connection, not even an association, weak or otherwise, between increased saturated fat intake and heart disease. Now, it may or may not increase LDL. It actually doesn't in many people. However, it does not increase your risk of heart disease. It's not even associated with an increased risk of heart disease. That is published in the top cardiology journal on earth. And in fact, some of these authors had been authors on other publications saying saturated fat's bad. You got to watch out for it. This is where they're mea culpa, saying, hey, we got it wrong, and we're sorry. This is what we think now, and this is what the evidence shows. So in fact, they found an inverse relationship between saturated fat intake and stroke. So the more saturated fat people eat, the less strokes they have. So lower your stroke risk. The less saturated fat you eat, the higher your stroke risk, the more people were having strokes. And there was a study with LDL, was tons of studies with LDL in the last decade showing literally the opposite of LDL being a heart disease risk. In fact, they found some that found it was protective, and they found one study looked at over 11 million people, one of the largest studies that's ever been performed, looking at LDL cholesterol, not even differentiating out. There's over 100 different kinds of LDL cholesterol, first of all. And it's important to know which kind you have. If you have the large, buoyant, healthy LDL cholesterol, it's not even associated with heart disease risk, right? Not really. And they found that even all the different particulate sizes that aren't as good for you as the large buoyant ones, didn't matter. Just LDL in general, that higher LDL cholesterol equated to lower all-cause mortality, right? So you lived longer, you died less often if you had higher cholesterol, any higher LDL cholesterol, right? So your LDL-C was higher, you lived longer on average for 11 million people, one of the largest studies that's ever been done. And you go back to the original studies looking at LDL cholesterol, total cholesterol, and heart disease. And in fact, these were fraudulent. So the saturated fat was never a problem. Cholesterol was never a problem. Cholesterol is very important. And it's ubiquitous. Every single one of our cells is made out of cholesterol. Our hormones are made out of cholesterol. Our brain is 20% cholesterol. Bile is made out of cholesterol. So many things are reliant on cholesterol. And also LDL is not cholesterol. It's a transport molecule. So you're talking about LDL-C, LDL-P, all these different sorts of things. However, these associations they had with total cholesterol and LDL and C and so forth, they were fraudulent. These were bought and paid for by the sugar companies. We know now, the Journal of the American Medical Association published in 2016 actual internal memos from the sugar companies detailing how they paid off 3 Harvard professors to falsify data and publish fraudulent studies to make it appear as if cholesterol caused heart disease when it was really sugar, and to exonerate sugar and say that it was safe when there were studies out there saying that actually there was a strong association with increased sugar consumption and heart disease. Also very strong association between seed oils, like cooking oils, canola oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, things like that, and heart disease. And in fact, it's probably a better relationship. I think they're both implicated, but seed oils are very bad. And so they paid off a number of professors. One of those professors from Harvard was named head of the USDA, and it was he who authored and published the 1977 USDA declaration saying that cholesterol causes heart disease, saturated fat increases cholesterol, stop eating both of them. And this changed the world. And since the 1970s, 1977, in America, we reduced red meat consumption by over 33%, reduced fat cholesterol intake by about the same, increased fruits and vegetables by 30-40% respectively, increased grains and increased high fructose corn syrup by over 3 times, increased seed oils by over 3 times. And what happened? Well, a lot of things happened. People got fatter, sicker, more chronic diseases, all these sorts of things, but heart disease rates tripled. Now, you'll have dishonest people, usually in the vegan cohort, that are trying to push their narrative and agenda. And they'll say, no, actually, heart disease deaths have gone down. It peaked in the 1960s and 70s, and then it started coming down, just perfectly coincided with a reduction in cholesterol. So, that's better. What did they say? What did we say? We said 3 times as much heart disease, right? They said heart disease, deaths from heart disease, mortality rate of heart disease peaked in the 1960s and 70s and then went down. Okay, so they are trying to distract you. They are talking about something else, and they're trying to pretend that they're talking about what you're talking about. So yes, deaths have gone down. What has gone up? Cardiothoracic surgery has gotten a lot better. Do quadruple bypasses a lot easier now. People don't die as often. We can do stents, endovascular treatment, go in, see someone who's getting angina or angina, depending on where you are, and that goes up the artery, and you just sort of open up those vessels before you ever have a heart attack. All these sorts of things. If you do have a heart attack, then go in, take out the clot, open up the area. Same with strokes in the brain, things like that. And so our interventions have gotten a lot better. Also, smoking rates have come down dramatically, which is a massive boon for heart for people who don't want to develop heart disease or die from heart disease. So the prevalence and incidence have gone up. So the numbers of people with heart disease has gone up, is going up around the world and in America. It's just the death rate hasn't gone up. It's sort of gone down because of our interventions and because of we've stopped smoking. But the amount of people that are getting their first heart attacks is going up, has been going up since then. And so you can't say that cholesterol directly causes, only thing there, and smoking, obviously, that cholesterol causes heart disease when you reduce cholesterol and heart disease rates triple. If anything, you can say that it's protective. And in fact, that's actually what a lot of their studies at the time showed, that they doctored the evidence and they misreported them. The Framingham study is one of the most famous studies in cardiology. I was taught this in my first year of medical school. It was just the study that just proved the case, right? And it followed, something like 76,000 people over, a few decades, and they made a lot of different associations with their health and all the different things that they were doing. One thing that was taught to me was that when they had higher levels of cholesterol, higher levels of cardiovascular death, right? So like strokes, heart attacks, things like that, right? Okay, pretty good. Correlation is not causation, but you got 76,000 people. It's a lot of people, goes up, that goes up. Okay, seems pretty good. People don't tend to ask questions after that, even though that's very weak evidence. Correlation cannot show causation, right? But the problem is that was actually a misrepresentation. That was the American Heart Association, which again was compromised by the sugar industry. They had people that they had paid off, at the heads of the American Heart Association at its inception. that were pushing their agenda, and they actually misrepresented the Framingham study. So the Framingham study actually showed that as you lowered your cholesterol, cardiovascular death rate went up. Exactly the opposite. So in fact, higher cholesterol protected people from heart attacks and strokes, right? And so, that's my answer. Saturated fat 100% does not cause heart disease, does not contribute to heart disease, and LDL doesn't either. It just doesn't. Maybe you can look at certain patterns of your different, LDL particulates and see if you have a greater or reduced risk of developing heart disease. That does not mean that those molecules are causing the disease. It just means that they're being used in the process, or they're being damaged. And this is, again, the smoke and not the fire, right? They're being damaged. Other things are being damaged. The whole body is being damaged, and you're getting heart disease, and you're blaming it on, this little guy over here, which is not borne out by the data. I don't think, even if you have the bad pattern of LDL, like the pattern B LDL, you're having all these small, dense, LDL C molecules running around, which have a stronger association with heart disease. It's a 70% increase risk of heart disease, right? So it's 1.7x, so 1.7 times increased risk of developing heart disease. Very scary, 70%, right? Well, metabolic syndrome increases your risk by 600%, so 6x. And diabetes increases your risk by 1,000%, 10x, right? Smoking is about the same. So that 1.7x on an SDLDL, I'm not getting out of bed for that, And the fact of the matter is, you're not going to have SDLDL if you're eating a natural, appropriate carnivore diet, and you're not eating carbs, you're not eating seed oils, you're not drinking alcohol. You're not going to have that, So saturated fat does not increase SDLDL, and statins don't decrease SDLDL. They stop your body from making the large buoyant LDLs, which are the good ones. So you're reducing the LDL that are good for you, and you're preserving all the ones that are bad for you, because those don't actually change. So it's not actually the change in your cholesterol that makes statins helpful. How helpful are they? If you've had a heart attack and you go on statins for at least 5 years, you'll increase your life expectancy on average by 5 days, not years, not months, days, right? And you have a lot of side effects, you have a lot of costs. And there's a study that actually showed that certain statins like Lipitor can cross the blood-brain barrier, and they can actually stop your brain cells from making cholesterol, which they need to do. 20% of your brain is made out of cholesterol, thereabouts. Your axons are myelinated with a lot of cholesterol, right? And so you can get demyelination, you can actually get atrophy of your brain. And you have all these patients with Alzheimer's who are on these statins. They said, okay, why don't we take you off the statins? Wouldn't you know, in 6 weeks, they didn't have Alzheimer's anymore. Funny enough. And then they put them back on the statins, and 6 weeks later, they had Alzheimer's again, right? So this is causing harm, and it's giving you 5 days, right? 5 days in a nursing home dribbling. Thank you, I'll go without. And if you haven't had a heart attack, it increases it by 3 days, right? So not much bang for your buck. And there's definitely a lot that could be problematic with it as well. So, and I don't know when the Cleveland Clinic said that. I don't know if they've changed their mind since then, but saturated fat is simply not the problem that people have thought it was. And that was a long answer to that, but I think that's probably one of the major ones that people have. Yeah. And it's just absolutely just hammer the nail in the coffin on that one, and just let that die and go away.
I just want to add something too. I didn't mention this before. Dr. Chaffee hasn't seen these questions in advance, and you're not using a teleprompter, right?
No.
So this is another thing. I always tell people, use your own 2 eyes and observe these things. Like all of that answer Dr. Chaffee just gave, that's the carnivore brain at work, right? Do you think, Dr. Chaffee, before this, you would have been able to rattle off just your stats and figures and statistics and studies and just like that? Like, I'm finding myself on carnivore, I'm able to just riff. I did a video yesterday for like 40 minutes where I could never do that before. It's something kind of, sorry, I'm getting off track here, but something interesting with carnivore. The other thing you said that's so interesting, I heard Dr. Philip Ovadia talk about that too, the metabolic health. Why doesn't anybody talk about metabolic health? Everyone that knows I'm doing carnivore, I want to see your LDL. You're going to die of a heart attack. Nobody talks about metabolic health. And it's like you said, 6 times more likely to have heart disease if you have poor metabolic health. And you look around the world right now, everybody seems to have poor metabolic health and nobody's worried about it. And gee, I wonder why, because if you're worried about metabolic health, that's less sugar and junk food you're going to be eating. And like we've said before, if you want to sell an incredible amount of sugar, just demonize meat and get everybody scared about LDL. And if you're not eating meat, the only thing left is to go back to the sugar and the junk food and the carbs.
Well, and the thing is too, is that if you are eating the junk food and you're getting sick, and then you need the medicine, right? So that they're all tied up. They're all invested in each other. So the food companies are invested heavily in the pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceutical companies are invested heavily in the food companies. And in some cases, like Kellogg's actually makes diabetes medication. So they make frosted, cornflakes and things like that. And then they sell that to you, gives you diabetes, and then they sell you the medication for it. That's knowledge of forethought. They know what's happening. They're selling you a product that causes the disease, which now they're selling you the treatment for. I think that's honestly diabolical. I think that's pure evil, that you're doing something that causes disease and you're profiting from it. You're profiting from people eating your product, which is harming them. And then you're like, yeah, well, I'll just sell them this other thing too. That was what someone said, that they heard someone at a drug company exec said, my favorite drug is, and they were thinking, it was like, oh, it's going to be this thing that cures childhood leukemia and all these sorts of things. I was like, oh, what is it? And it's just like, my favorite drugs are the ones that cause problems that need more drugs. Those are my favorite drugs. And I think if I was in the room with them, I'll probably knock the guy out and feel pretty good about it, but that I think is truly sick, and I think it was Goldman Sachs or something like that, one of the investment companies. If it wasn't them, I apologize, but there was an investment company, I think it was Goldman Sachs, that someone leaked a picture from one of their meetings that says, is it really a good business model to cure diseases, right? Implying that, shouldn't we just perpetuate a chronic state that we can sell someone the treatment for the symptom, something that you can treat the symptom for 60 years and put them on blood pressure medication, diabetes medication, statins and things like that for 60 years and just, profit on them their whole life until they die young, sick, and miserable. I think that's truly sick. I mean, people have lost their humanity, and I don't think that I honestly think these people should be jailed. Like, if you're knowingly doing something like that, you got to go. Like, you have to go. Like, that is not okay. You are causing harm and you're profiting from it. Like, you don't get to do that.
Right. Wow. All right. Here's another question or concern. I'm scared to start carnivore because I've heard many say red meat is associated with an increased risk of colon and rectum cancer, and evidence also suggests it's associated with some other cancers.
So the University of Washington published last year a massive review looking at hundreds of different studies that asked that question and looked into it. And the ones that suggested that there was a very, very weak and tenuous link, and again, association with red meat, processed meat, whatever, and any cancer of any form, rectal cancer or otherwise, they found that they were extremely flawed studies, extremely weak evidence, extremely bad studies, that they said these were lazy studies. This was junk science, and that they didn't prove anything. They didn't even show association. When you get rid of the confounding factors and the biases and things like that, they found no association between meat and any cancers, and certainly not unprocessed red meat and cancer. So this is a problem, again, going back to the processed food companies and the Seventh-day Adventist Church and other sorts of things that have a vested interest against meat, not just for plants, but against meat, right? Because the Seventh-day Adventist Church are religiously anti-meat. And in the 1800s, they said that meat causes lustful feelings, so meat is a sin, because lust is a sin, meat is now a sin. And plants help suppress your lustful feelings. They help suppress your hormones and your health. And so your body says you can't procreate, right? And so that's what's happening there. But that's what they thought. They thought this was a good thing, that you just were depressed and miserable, and your body wasn't capable of having children. And somehow that was holy, even though the Bible tells you to go forth and multiply, And so they founded Sanitarium Foods and Kellogg's Foods, and the processed food industry was started by them to push this plant-based agenda to stop people and suppress their hormones and make them, less active sexually. For some reason, that really was important to them, to foist this on the rest of the world. And the sugar companies and the drug companies and the other food companies and things like that, they're the ones putting out the majority of the research in nutrition. So just Coca-Cola spends 11 times the amount of money on nutritional research than the NIH. And that's not to say what Nestle and Pepsi and Kellogg's and Sanitarium and the Seventh-day Adventists are putting out. So all of these studies, you have to look at where they're coming from. You have to look at who peer reviews them. Quite often it's Loma Linda Medical Center, which is the Seventh-day Adventist church's medical center and medical school, right? And then you have the Adventist studies. Oh, the Adventist study. Okay, again, you're looking. This is fruit from the poison vine, right? You're looking at the Adventists. They're doing their own study on their own people with their own numbers and their own interpretations, right? It's never going to be fair. So you look at all these studies. The vast majority of these studies are put out by these people that have vested interests. You cannot trust them. And so the University of Washington they were actual scientists, actual doctors who actually wanted to know the truth. They looked at these things and were like, these are crap. These are crap studies. They're horribly designed. They don't show what you're saying they show. And so that they just said absolutely not. So they concluded that. So you can find that study from the University of Washington last year. The reason people really blame, meat and processed meat in particular, with being a carcinogen, is because the WHO said it was in 2015, right? They said that processed meat was a carcinogen, caused cancer, and that red meat probably caused cancer, right? Probably mean, okay. So name one thing in red meat that causes cancer, right? There isn't anything, right? However, the WHO actually has a web page dedicated to different natural food toxins. And you're like, oh, okay, so maybe there'll be stuff about meat in there. Not a single thing in meat. Everything's about plants, all the different toxins that are in plants that we eat. And they're toxic in the proportions that we eat them. And you have to detoxify them. You have to prepare them in certain ways, or you can die, right? So these are very toxic. Not a single line on meat. There was a mention of algae, not meat, that could get into sea life, right? Shellfish, fish, and things like that, right? And then you could get sick from eating, eating the algae through, the fish or the shellfish that had eaten the algae. But that's not the fish doing that. So they said that processed meat was the problem, right? Okay, but if you go from red meat, unprocessed meat, into processed meat, it becomes cancerous, carcinogenic. Okay, well, what happened? Did you add more meat to it? And that made it cancerous all of a sudden? No, they added plants, seasonings, sugar, artificial ingredients, a bunch of preservatives, a bunch of nonsense like that. So if you went from an not cancerous thing to a cancerous thing, it's the things you added to it that were the problem, right? So it wasn't the meat in the first place. But the WHO, it's even worse than that, because they looked at these studies and they looked at the flawed studies. They looked at the bad studies that pushed what they wanted to, because wanted to say, because a large portion of these people, a controlling portion of this group, were vegans, vegetarians, and Seventh-day Adventists, or a combination thereof, right? And so there are other people on that panel, still in the WHO, who were basically railroaded and couldn't make decisions, couldn't say like, hey, look, you're throwing out very strong data that show that there's no relationship between red meat, and cancer, including very flawed studies that are very weak evidence, that are not as good and yet they push your narrative, and they kept those in. And so they said that was one gentleman said that was one of the hardest things he's had to go through professionally, seeing them constantly, throw away very, very good studies that showed that there was no connection with meat and cancer, and bringing in ones that were crap. And he said, okay, you guys need to display your biases. You need to say that you're vegans and vegetarians and Seventh-day Adventists. They refuse, right? So of course, this is narrative. This is ideology. This is not science. This is not fact. And so the more people that understand that, the better, because they can only survive. You can only survive a web of lies if people don't know that they're lies. And so the more people that understand that, the better. Meat does not cause cancer, right? The cancer rates of the Inuit actually very low. It's successively gone up in successive generations and decades as they've been further incorporated into Western society and started eating more Western foods, right? Cancer doesn't exist in the wild. Cancer is a disease of civilization. That was a book title by a professor from Harvard in the 1920s called Wilhelm Stefansson, who people know wrote a book called The Fat of the Land. He lived with the Inuit, then called the Eskimo, for 12 years, learned their language, learned their culture, just ate meat the whole time. He said, I've never felt better in my entire life. And he really started looking into it. And he found that cancer only existed in, more modern civilizations, not in the primitive populations. We do not see cancer in wild animals. We do not see cancer in zoo animals being fed their natural diet. We do see cancers in pets that are given a bunch of grains and plant-based crap that they're not designed to eat. We do see it in zoo animals if they're fed this plant-based crap that they're not designed to eat either. So that's my answer. That's another one of these things that really just do need to die. It's propaganda. It's ideology. It is not science.
Love it. And that's one big thing I've learned on carnivore, because my whole life, when I would hear a study, you hear them all the time too. You're inundated with them throughout your whole life on the nightly news. Meat's going to kill you. Like all these studies. I always used to think studies, science, and I never really thought about them. I always, in the back of my head, it's like, well, these are here for my benefit. They're not. Like, you really need to question all of these studies, because it's incredibly expensive to do a study. Someone's not going to do it unless there's some sort of bias or some sort of agenda or some sort of pharmaceutical pill that they want to sell at the end of it. It's kind of like when you're doing carnivore, you got to be a detective looking at all the ingredients or foods, or just only eat meat. But you got to really look into things, and it's the same thing with those studies. I don't listen to any studies anymore unless you really look into it. Here's another one. Carnivore diet is way too restrictive. Life is too short to sacrifice ice cream and social outings for a carnivore diet that'll make me a joyless hermit.
Very specific.
You don't seem like a joyless hermit. I'm not a joyless hermit, but
no, I mean, look, that's the same argument as saying, that's too restrictive, not doing meth and heroin all day. I mean, that's ridiculous. You want to live your life like that? I mean, really? You want to not do heroin and meth? I mean, have you ever done heroin and meth? You might like it. You might want to do that every day. Same idea, right? You're doing something that is knowingly bad for you, right? Obviously, drugs are pretty intense, but it's illustrating a point. You're doing something that's knowingly bad for you because you want the effect, right? So you want the social experience. You just want to have something nummy like ice cream. That's sacrificing your health for a momentary joy is not a good idea. And so, we look at people that drink to excess or do drugs, and that person would probably be like, that's ridiculous. That's no way to live. Well, but life is short. Well, you're going to make it a lot shorter by doing that. And yes, you're going to have fun now, but you're not going to actually live and a fulfilling life that you could with, family, career, loved ones, travel, all sorts of interesting things that could engage you for decades. And the same thing is true with food, right? You're trading decades of your life. We're not talking about a few years. We're talking about decades. We know genetically, as geneticists, that chromosomally, we are designed to live 120 years. I was taught that in my genetics class 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago now. Jesus Christ, I'm old. So, it's, that based on the length of our telomeres, right? So we look at that, and you can sort of gauge how long an animal or a species is supposed to live. We're 120 years. I mean, it's crazy. You go back through historical records. There's civilizations that have said this. The Native Americans, they would often live 120 years. They're just saying that. Herodotus documented the Ethiopians. They said they lived 120 years, just ate boiled meat, just drank milk and water. Must have been lying. But the Persians said they lived 80 years and they ate bread. That's about what we're eating. We're living. They didn't have a bunch of processed foods. It was just breads and things like that. So, but it was always 120. It was always coming back to that. So what does that mean? If you are genetically designed to live 120 years, then that means, by definition, that if you just don't mess up, just stay out of your own way and just don't mess up, that you should live 120 years without doing anything special. It should just happen. It should just happen on its own. So why are we dying in our 60s and 70s? That's literally middle-aged. And that's because we are rotting our bodies. We're rotting our brains. We're decaying decades early. We're starting to decay in our 30s and 40s. Oh, you're middle-aged, you're past 20, and it's just downhill from there. When was that ever a thing? Right? Benjamin Franklin was kicking ass in his 60s and 70s, like during the Revolutionary War, and Socrates was in his late 70s when they had to kill him. He was so healthy and vigorous that he was there corrupting the youth of Athens in his late 70s, right? So that's just not the case. We are designed to live a lot longer, and yet we're dying, we're collapsing, our bodies are just decaying and degenerating. We're getting heart disease in our 30s and 40s. People are dying of heart attacks in their 30s, which is crazy. The first heart attack was in 1910 or so, and now people in their 30s, people in their 20s are getting heart disease. Like, how the hell is that possible, right? So this is just a major problem. So yes, you can do that, and good luck to you. But I would rather be vigorous and healthy for the next 100 years. And people, I don't want to live that long. Oh, that'd be horrible. Where did this come from? Most people say, I want to live forever. I don't want to die. Then you say, okay, hey, you just ate meat. You can live another 100 years. Oh, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want to live that long. What the hell? Why are we talking about this? You just said you wanted to live forever, but you don't actually want to live longer. They think that, you're going to age in the same pattern that we're aging now. You get up to 70, 80, people are just decrepit and dying and just not doing well health-wise. They don't have a very, envious life, sitting at home, not being able to do anything, sitting in a nursing home, playing shuffleboard or something like that, if they can even get out of a chair. And then stacking on another 40 years of that, where you're even getting worse and worse and worse. And you're just sitting there with a blanket and a towel with someone wiping your face. Obviously, that's not a desirable life. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being hale and hearty, healthy older adults, and your brain's still working, your body's still working, you being fully independent and active until you just slowly pass away at 135. Thank you. Count me in. I'm happy with that. Invest in compound interest right now. Just it's a waiting game at that point. You'll be fine. You'll live in a castle in Transylvania somewhere for the next 50, last 50 years of your life. You'll be fine. All right. So, it depends on what you find restrictive. Is just eating our biologically designed diet. That's restrictive. Well, why not eat, just random plants? Well, why would you? That's not good for you. It's going to be healthy for you. Okay. So that's not food for you. So I don't consider non-meat food because it's not food for our species. Food is species specific. So I'm not restricting at all. I eat everything that is designed for humans to eat, which is any animal basically, or the parts of that animal that aren't, poisonous, right? Have poison sacs and things like that. And so that's what I eat. I don't limit myself at all. I'm very unrestrictive. What is restrictive is type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer is very restrictive. Autoimmune disease, multiple sclerosis that will, cripple you, put you in a wheelchair and then kill you. That's pretty restrictive. Having to take thousands of dollars of medications a month, that's pretty restrictive. That's gonna put you out a bit. Going bankrupt, having to pay for chemo for yourself or a loved one, that's pretty restrictive. Taking medications 20 times a day, having massive side effects, GI upsets, and vomiting, being sick all the time. That's actually pretty damn restrictive. You're not being able to play with your kids is restrictive. Not being able to be an active member in your relationship, in your marriage, not being able to work properly, being sick, so sick that you can't even function, you can't succeed in your job, in your career, in your profession, being so racked with chronic pain that you can't leave the house without copious amounts of medications that dope you up so much that you can barely function. That's restrictive. Not having something nummy every now and then, that is the least restrictive thing I've ever heard of in my entire life.
Yes. Wow. So true. And they say joyless hermit. I'm on carnivore day 134. I have never felt better my entire life, 100 years, with no ice cream. And the people that are saying, like you mentioned earlier, oh, who wants to live to 100? They're in the mindset of the standard American diet, feeling like garbage every single day. If they felt like you or I feel right now, oh yeah, take me to 120 years old, 130 years old in a second. I feel amazing. And the ice cream's yummy, like you said, but everyone out there really needs to think about this. Like if I had some ice cream right now, every single time I've done it in the past before, I felt like garbage afterwards. I felt inflamed and my stomach's gurgling and bubbling. And it was never like, oh, gee, I'm glad I had that gigantic ice cream. I feel so much better now. So much better this way. And people say too, it's joyless. I disagree on that too. I have a big ribeye waiting for me at home right now. And every single day still, day 134, I am smiling when I'm eating it. I feel great. It tastes delicious. It's like the best thing in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's another one. I'm athletic and I would never adopt a carnivore diet because it includes almost zero carbs. To thrive physically, carbs are essential. If carnivore is so great, wouldn't the NFL have adopted it?
Well, the New Zealand All Blacks have, and they are crushing it in the world stage in rugby. So, they've been doing that or at least low carb for a number of years. In fact, there's a guy, Dr. Peter Brunkner, who's one of the top sports medicine doctors in the world. He's down here in Australia, and he's worked with a number of different teams around Australia and turned them into absolute machines. Just going low carb, not even full carnivore, just getting rid of carbs, specifically just getting rid of carbs and going keto. The Australian national cricket team, they went and got thumped by England, and they lost all five days of the test match, right? So they just got thumped, driven out of town. England was happy, hurrah! And so they went back 6 months later or so. They went and thumped India, which is a major country to beat in cricket, right? And they thumped them 5-0, right? I believe that's the case. And what was the difference? They went from getting thumped by England and then thumping a better team than England. What happened? Well, in that time, Peter Brunkner got to them and got them all on a low carb diet, got them off the carbohydrates, and they became such vicious athletes that they absolutely destroyed the competition after that. And you see that time and time again in professional sports. There are people doing carnivore. Trust me on that. They just don't want you to know about it. They don't want their competition to know about it because they get paid to play. And so they want that advantage. This is why people take steroids without telling anybody, because it gives them an advantage over other people. Or maybe it levels the playing field against other people who are doing steroids as well. They want to make their spot. So they love their teammates and all that sort of stuff. They still want to start that week. And so they want to be better than the guy who's gunning for his spot, right? Or her spot. And so they want that advantage. They don't necessarily want other people to know about it. I was always happy to everybody know my secret and get my team better. I was always happy for that. But a lot of people are just like, hey, this is my livelihood, and I certainly don't want my competition knowing about it. So they kept it hush hush. And so there are a number of professional athletes that absolutely do this, and and there's more and more data coming out with this. There's a Professor Tim Noakes from South Africa who was like the major guy on the world stage of sports medicine, saying you need to eat carbs. You need carbs to burn carbs. You need these things for high level athletics. And he just went, oh my God, I'm wrong. I've lied to everybody. Because things, when you stop eating carbohydrates, your body makes carbohydrates. So yeah, you do need carbohydrates, but you have more carbohydrates if you stop eating them, because your body makes it from your fat stores, and it makes it nearly instantly. So you're making blood sugar, you're making glycogen, you're making ketones as well, and you're constantly replenishing your liver and muscle glycogen from your fat stores. So you have something like 15,000 kilojoules in your of energy that you can stuff if you're carbo loading in your the night before, something like that. You stuff your liver full of glycogen. That's sort of a maximum capacity. But you have 150,000 locked up in your fat stores. So even for a slim athlete, you'll have that. So you are going to run out of your stored glycogen far faster than you're going to run out of your adiposity. And so you're going to keep replenishing that. And I played professional sports, high level competitive rugby for 10 years before medical school, and 5 years of that thereabouts was on carnivore. 5 years that was not. I can tell you for a cold frozen fact that it was thousands of times better on carnivore. I couldn't get tired. I couldn't run out of energy. I couldn't get sore. I was at a dead sprint every second of every game, every training, every day. No one could beat me on fitness training. No one. There wasn't a single person that I ever came across that could beat me for endurance and fitness and things like that. Not a soul. I was sprinting equivalents of marathons. And I remember thinking, I was like, I should enter a marathon because I could literally sprint it. I wouldn't get tired. I wouldn't have to stop. I could just be at a dead sprint for 26 miles. I'd set a world record on my first marathon and just be in the news. I thought it was just like, I should do that. But the thought of just running, for 26 miles, just like the most boring thing that I could think of. If I'm running more than 40 meters and not hitting somebody, like I'll probably hit somebody, I'll just tell you that. So, so like that was what was worth it to me. But I thought, I was like, okay, well, if one comes up, I'll do that. But this is before the internet. So I didn't have anything to look up, and I didn't really care to either. But I felt way better when I was doing that than any other point in my life, except for right now. And I'm back feeling that way. And at 38, I got back to a carnivore diet, realizing that that's what I was doing in my early 20s, from 20 to 25, just by happenstance. I just stopped eating plants because I learned how toxic they were to humans in college. And I was just like, right, I'm not eating this crap. And I just defaulted into eating meat and eggs. And then at 38, I realized, okay, wow, that's what I was doing. I was living as we're designed to live. Humans are carnivores as a species. That's just the kind of animal that we are. And that's what I was doing. I was living as a carnivore. I was eating as a carnivore. And just like any other animal, you give us what we're designed to eat, we're gonna do better. And so at 38 years old, I went back on just carnivore. I was older, a lot older. I hadn't played a full season of rugby in 3 years. I'd just come back from Bangladesh doing humanitarian work. Hadn't worked out in months, right? Fat, out of shape. I was like 270 pounds. I wasn't like, well, I was technically obese, but, I still had like, I could still sort of see my six pack and things like that, but I had a lot of extra weight. Normally, like, I'm sort of like, my playing weight is around 240, right? So I had definitely had like 30 extra pounds on me, probably more than that because I didn't have as much muscle. And within 2 weeks, I felt so good that I was like, right, I'm going out to play rugby again. It's 38 years old, fat and out of shape. And I went back and I just felt great again. I was like, right, can I do this like in my early 20s where I just push myself as hard as I can? My body just responds. I could. So I was at a dead sprint every second of that training, and couldn't wear myself out. Wasn't sore the next day. Like this is going to be bad for some people. And so I just started training again, and I just started feeling absolutely amazing. Shredded down, stacked on muscle, and just got better and better and better, more athletic. And I'm 38 years old, and I'm out there competing with professional rugby players in their 20s, right? So it makes a massive difference. This is something I've worked with a lot of athletes. You can go to my channel. There's a playlist on bodybuilding and athletics. There are athlete after athlete after athlete that is showing they're absolutely killing it. A lot of professional athletes, professional rugby players, collegiate rugby players, like top level European rugby players in university and professionals. and they're absolutely crushing it. They're just stacking on muscle, getting crazy fit and killing it. And their athleticism is going crazy. Ryan Talbot, he's a great guy. I've had him on the podcast twice. He's an NCAA two-time All-American decathlete and NCAA one for Michigan State. Both of those All-American titles were on a carnivore diet. He changed mid-season, went carnivore, and as a mid-season adaptation, he said he still didn't find it was a downside. He felt, that there were some adaptation, periods going on, but he actually felt amazing. And so he ended up doing so much better. He ended up winning the Big Ten championship in his first year in doing the decathlon, set a school record, and then went to nationals and earned All-American honors, and got second the next year and again earned All-American honors. So, and he's just saying he's just getting better and better and better. And he was saying that he actually has to work out less, because if he's working out more and lifting weights, he actually puts on muscle too easily, right?
Wow.
And he doesn't want to be as jacked and muscular because he wants to be lighter. So he's got no fat to lose. So, he needs to keep his musculature down. So that's what you get on a carnivore diet. And the only reason that people in the NFL aren't doing it is because they just don't know about it. But as soon as they do, you can bet your ass that they will be doing it.
Could you imagine a whole team of carnivores and the coach is a carnivore? That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you got to use your own two eyes too. Like, look at Dr. Chaffee, look at Dr. Baker, look at all of the carnivore people you see too. And for myself, I have never been athletic or exercise. I couldn't do a pull-up for $1 million before I started carnivore. Every single day, every single morning, this morning included, I get up at 5 a.m. I jog, I do pull-ups, I do exercise. And it's like you said, I'm not even like lifting a bunch of weights, but that's what people have said. Well, Kerry, you lost so much weight, and you're like, you're growing muscle. Like, what are you in the gym every single day? No, I have these resistance bands. I do these little pathetic resistance bands every day, but it's just like, it goes on so quickly. And the thing you said is so true. I never get tired anymore. Bike riding, jogging, whatever. I could go a little bit and then I would just be fatigued and trying to catch my breath, and I couldn't catch up. On carnivore, it's crazy. You don't get tired. You don't get that fatigue. Should we take maybe yep.
I was just going to say there's just someone in the comments that saying that this guy Josh Banks saying that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Yeah, so look up Tim Noakes, Professor Tim Noakes. He's putting out copious amounts of study, randomized controlled trials, like taking athletes and taking two groups of them, randomizing them, giving one carbs, not giving the other carbs, right? Getting them keto adapted and putting them to work and checking their results. And they find that there's actually no letdown in the keto crowd. So you're saying that you have to have carbs? Absolutely don't. And Tim Noakes has proven that. And in fact, now you don't have to run on your glycogen. You will run out of your glycogen. You only have, an hour or two, depending on how much glycogen you have. So if you're doing a really high intensity sport, you're going to run out of that a bit quicker as well, depending on how hard you're working. You don't run out of that when you're fat adapted, right? So he found that these people had no drop in their athleticism, in the short term, and they could just keep going where the other guys dropped off without refeeding and taking a bunch of sugar packets and things like that. And then he took them and switched them and fed the non-carb group carbs and the carb group no carbs, put them on a keto diet. Keto adapted them again, tested them again. There was no drop in performance by switching and coming off the carbs. So you're right. You make these sorts of claims, you need to have evidence, and it's there. Look it up. Professor Tim Noakes.
Great. Should we take
and Peter Brunkner and Dr. Peter Brunkner and Paul Mason? All of these guys are putting out copious amounts of studies and research.
It's amazing too that there's studies out there too, because I get that comment a lot, and it's hard to have studies for something like carnivore because there's not a lot of money to be made if everybody just eats meat and they do what they're supposed to. But the fact that there are is great. And I was thinking maybe we got one more carnivore argument here, and then maybe we could jump into some of the viewers' questions and super chats. Here's one. I get this comment all the time on my channel. My doctor insists I need fiber. How can I possibly do that on carnivore diet?
Well, I mean, you ask them what the evidence is, what they'll say. First of all, they won't know it, because I guarantee you they've never actually looked at a single study referencing fiber. But the studies that do suggest that you do better with fiber, and they do exist, These are epidemiological studies. These are not interventional trials that you actually try to, where you can prove cause and effect. And they say, well, when you increase fiber compared to the standard population eating a standard American diet, which is highly processed garbage, which doesn't have a lot of fiber, because you can't put a lot of fiber in processed foods because you have to freeze it and ship it and all these sorts of things, that when you do that, you're eating more fiber, so you're eating more whole foods. You're not eating all the processed crap. Okay, so you're that's not the same thing. You're not saying that the fiber is doing better. Well, no, you're not just adding fiber to, to a Happy Meal and to, fries and processed, cookies and cakes and things like that. You're going to a whole food diet approach. So you're actually changing a lot of variables. So there's a lot of confounding factors, a lot of things that you're changing. You're getting rid of a lot of things that are really bad for you. You're adding things that respectively better for you, that have fiber in them. And I would say that they are better. And so if you're looking at that contrast, of course you're going to improve. So that's not the same thing, right? So you're not saying that fiber is better. There's a lot of confounding factors. Maybe fiber is doing that, but maybe not. The only interventional trials have actually not been so favorable for fiber. There was one that looked at, it was around sort of 75 people or so. So smaller study, but it's really the only one that exists. And they split people up. They're all symptomatic for GI upset and distress. And so take that for what you will. But they split them up into 4 groups. 1 kept eating the same amount of fiber. Group 2, increase the amount of fiber. Group 3, reduce the amount of fiber. Group 4, eliminate fiber entirely. And wouldn't you know, more fiber made more GI upset. Same fiber, same amount of GI upset. Less fiber, less GI upset. No fiber, completely fixed all symptoms in all participants, right? So the fiber seemed to have been causing the GI upset. There was another study with over 2,000 people looking at, doing colonoscopies on these different people and looking for risk factors for diverticulosis, which is, basically colon failure. You're getting these outpouchings with failure of that organ, and you get quite sick. You can get diverticulitis. There can be an infection of the diverticulosis. You can get ruptures, and you can die. It's very serious. So they found in over 2,000 people, the only risk factors, increased risk factors of developing diverticulosis. First of all, age. As we get older, it's just more likely that you're going to damage your body enough to develop this. But then after that, it was just fiber, more fiber, not less fiber, more fiber, and more bowel motions. So people that were having on average more than 15 bowel motions a week had a massively increased risk of developing diverticulosis, right? So you're eating a whole bunch of plant matter with fiber in it. You cannot digest that. You cannot absorb that. You cannot use that. You have to eliminate it by design, right? And so you're going to be, going to the bathroom more often than other people, right? So constipation was not associated with diverticulosis. That's what it's attributed to. Oh, you're getting constipated and fiber helps with constipation. No, constipation was not a risk factor. Meat was not a risk factor. Dietary fat was not a risk factor. More fiber, more bowel motions, probably from the fiber, were the only associations. They were strongly correlated as well. It was like a 600, 700% increased risk, right? Those are the studies that exist on fiber that, actually tell you something.
Love it. Wow, we have over 1,000 people on right now. 1,051.
Nice. Jesus.
We've got a bunch of super chats and questions and fears from the viewers here. So I thought maybe we would jump into some of those. A couple of new members here. Jeff, thank you. And Kip, thank you. Anyone that joins and becomes a member on my channel, every penny from that goes towards the Carnivore Diet documentary. So I really appreciate it. All super chats that I get go to that as well. Here's a question for Dr. Chaffee. 39-year-old overweight, has IIH, has CSF leak nasally and on Diamex. I read diet may help IIH. Would Carnivore Diet help? Because I read low-fat sodium is suggested. Neurosurgeon suggested a shunt.
Yeah, well, so there's different causes of IIH. Diamox is just a medication that can reduce the amount of CSF that we produce in our brain. CSF leak, that's not great. That should be addressed. Sometimes those will heal spontaneously, but if that doesn't, then she'll need an intervention. That's a very, very big risk of developing meningitis, getting bacteria up through that break, wherever the break is, in their nose to into the brain. So that's a big deal. So it sounds like she's being on treatment for that. But however, if you sort of keep leaking, I mean, that needs to be addressed. Like that's a big deal. She can get very, very sick and be life-threatening. IIH, I don't know offhand. There might be studies. First of all, going back to that other gentleman, there are literally thousands of very high-level studies, interventional trials, control trials, and so on with ketogenic diets in humans and animals. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of these things now that show specific benefits in many, many, many different issues. And so it's becoming much more popularized in medical circles now. And there could be one for IIH. I'm not sure. I don't know of any studies, but you know what? It's how our body was designed anyway, was just to eat meat and not eat all these other things that can cause direct harm to our body. So, either way, I think it's in her best interest and everyone's best interest to go on a biologically appropriate diet. And all the best evidence shows that what that is for humans is a high fat meat based diet. And I think that will help in a lot of other ways. Whether it helps with that, I don't know. That's something I'll make a note of, and I'll try to look up and see if we have any studies on keto. There won't be any for carnivore, but there would be for keto. And carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet, or it really should be, I think. And so I'll take a look for that. But I think it's worth a try anyway. But if that keeps leaking, need to be on top of her doctors to make sure that gets investigated, because that might need to be surgically stopped up. A CSF leak is a very, very big deal.
All right. Alia Wells, $20. Hi, Kerry and Dr. Chaffee. First donation for the doc. Let's get those super chats going. Thank you, Alia. Alia is awesome.
Thank you very much.
A whole bunch of funds earlier. Bishop's Deep Learning. Meat causes an insulin response. Can you elaborate on why this is not a problem and it's okay to eat meat multiple times per day?
Yeah. So, the thing is that when it's first of all, the protein that causes an insulin response, not fat. Fat does not trigger an insulin response. When you're eating, people go by the glycemic index. We'll get fooled by this, because you'll see protein has a higher, glycemic, insulin response. But that's not actually the case. That's only in combination with carbohydrates. So if you're not eating carbohydrates, you won't have as big of a jump in your insulin response, okay, or blood sugar or your insulin response. And so if you're just eating meat and you have a large bolus of protein that comes with eating until you're full, yes, you'll get a slight rise in your blood sugar, much smaller than you would if you were eating carbohydrates. And yes, you'll get a rise in your insulin as well. However, you will then get a correspondingly high, if not higher, release of glucagon, which opposes insulin, brings that back down, brings your blood sugar back down, normalizes your insulin as well. So it's actually a normal physiological process. That's part of the physiological response when we're eating, and that's okay. It's people talk about we shouldn't be in ketosis all this time or whatever. You're not. If you eat a big steak, you will come out of ketosis temporarily, and then you'll get back into it afterwards. And so that's the issue there. It's not a big deal for that reason. You're not going to spike your insulin. You're not going to spike your blood sugar for a prolonged period of time. So you're not going to kick yourself out of therapeutic ketosis or nutritional ketosis if you're worried about that. So so that's fine. Also, we are designed to eat a certain way. I think that way is just eating meat. That's what our ancestors did throughout the ice ages, and even more recently, the Native Americans in the plains are eating buffalo and pemmican and things like that. They were extraordinarily healthy, living 120 years by their records. So I guess we can just call them liars, I guess, but that's what they were saying. And and you have people talking about how they were in the War of 1812 and describing this and describing that, and you're like, it's 1920 and you were fighting in the War of 1812. And they're like, okay, maybe he's just making it up. Whatever. You can think what you want. I'll think what I want. But either way, they were extraordinarily healthy, and they were found to be the tallest human beings on Earth. right? Your average height of a population denotes the average health of a population. They were just eating, largely, they're just eating meat, fatty meat. And so whatever your body does, whatever your physiology does, whatever your biochemistry does, when you're giving it its input, when cows eat grass, something happens. When lions eat gazelle, something happens. Maybe they go out of ketosis for a while, they get an insulin response. When whales eat, a lot of krill or whatever, something's happening. But when they're eating what they're supposed to eat, what happens is supposed to happen. And that's the same thing for us. So I think that the evidence shows that humans are designed to eat meat. That's what we evolved on. And that means that's what we're supposed to eat. What we've been eating for the entire existence of humanity, that is by definition what we're adapted to, right? That's how that works, right? So 2-3 million years of just eating meat or predominantly eating meat, that is what we're adapted to eating. That's what we're going to do best on. And so if you're just eating what you're designed to eat, your body's going to do what it's designed to do. So if your insulin goes up a bit, great. I'm not too worried about it. I've literally never checked my ketones or blood sugar because I just don't care, because I'm eating what I'm supposed to eat. My body's doing what it's supposed to do. And that's all that really matters.
I get that question a lot. I'm like, what would I do differently? There's nothing I could do any differently to affect that number. Troy said, question in another post. Thank you for all you do. I'm looking right now to see if I can find that other post. Thank you so much. Robono, $20 super chat. Thank you for all you're doing. Question, could you address the effects of cream again?
Well, the main thing, so cream is going to have a lot of very positive fatty acids. In fact, so this is something I was actually reading Dr. Robert Lustig's book, Metabolic, which is a fantastic book, and it sort of blows a lot of the case open on processed foods and fructose in particular, and really does a scathing review of the. He actually talks about the Seventh-day Adventists and the food companies and things like that, food and drug companies, how this is not, they're not doing things for you that they should. And he spoke about the fats in dairy, and they're odd chained saturated fatty acids, right? And so meat has even chain, and these do different things in your body. This is the whole idea of calories in, calories out is a bit insane to me. Anyone who's taken biochemistry should know better, and anyone who hasn't taken biochemistry should do that before they start talking about this. These compounds are different, or very complex organic chemicals. They have different complex chemical interactions in your body. So you have dozens of carbohydrates. They do different specific things in your body. You have dozens of different amino acids. They do different specific things and have different chemical and hormonal responses in your body. Same goes with your fatty acids. So you have saturated fatty acids in milk, and they are odd chained fatty acids. They seem to be actually cardioprotective, right? So you're drinking cream, that is you're getting a lot of positive fatty acids, saturated fatty acids, which are good for you, cardioprotective from various studies. And they're taking out a lot of the proteins and things like that as well. So, a lot of good things there. Some people respond to dairy. Some people have a problem with dairy for whatever's in there. A lot of people are responding to the casein, which is, one of the proteins that milk has. And a lot of people respond to that. And so they usually have to avoid that. Most creams will get out most of that, but they'll probably still have some in there. So if you're very sensitive to that, you can have a problem with that. I don't think there's too much of a problem having cream or other fats, because we need a lot of fat. We typically need around 1 gram of fat per 1 gram of protein. About. For different people, it's going to be slightly different, maybe up or down, depending on your activity level and your protein demands and things like that from athletics or lifting. You're going to need a bit different. So everyone needs to mold that to their own situation, but it's shoot for gram and then adjust from there for yourself. But you have a limited capacity to absorb fat. It's actually very difficult for your body to absorb fat without bile. You only make a limited amount of bile every day. And once that runs out, you can't really absorb fat. You can absorb some, but it's very low figures, like 10 to 15%, largely medium chain fatty acids. So most of that's going to go out. And that's actually what keeps your stool soft. This is why you don't get well, if you're eating enough fat, you don't get constipated on a carnivore diet. You'll get the hard, dry, rocky stools. You'll get infrequent stools, but that's not constipation. Constipation is the consistency of stools, not the frequency of the stools. And so if you're not eating a whole bunch of fiber, you're just not getting rid of a lot of waste because you're absorbing 98 to 99% of the meat that you're eating. And so you don't have much waste to go out. It's actually a lot more convenient to just not be on the toilet all day. And so cream, you add some of that stuff in. Some people will have some issues with some of the things in there. And so, maybe that's not something you want to do, but most people will be okay with it. I do find that some people with dairy, any dairy, seems to stall. There's something in there that can trigger your body not to lose as much fat or even put on weight. Not everybody, but some people find that that's a stall. So if that's you, then just cut out the dairy and just go to just meat and water, even just red meat and water. And most people do fine with that. But by and large, cream's fine, unless there's a specific problem for you.
Yeah, I love your statement too. Not to be indelicate, but I was at the grocery store the other day and you look in people's carts and it's 99% stuff that's going straight in and then straight out. Like, and it's funny and it's crazy, but then when you think about it, imagine the toll it's putting on your body processing all of that garbage. For me, for 42 years, processing all this stuff that literally is going in one end, out the other, and it's just complete waste. It's kind of crazy. This next one here from Troya, she left the earlier super chat and she said she left another comment. I found it. Here it is. Question: had labs done after 9 months on carnivore, cholesterol 246, HDL 66, triglycerides 59, LDL 165. Doctor thinks I'm doomed. Thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, well, look, obviously you have to take these in the particular context of the individual, but just looking at those numbers, that wouldn't really bother me. You'll refer back to, my 20-minute answer on the first question. Cholesterol was just never a problem. It was just never a problem in the first place. We talked about pattern A and pattern B type cholesterol, the large, buoyant, fluffy, nice LDL cholesterol that your body makes and that statins destroy. Those are great for you. If you have higher HDL, which you do, your HDL is in a great range, and you have lower triglycerides, which you do, your triglycerides are in a great range, you are much more likely to have an abundance of the large, buoyant, fluffy, nice, good LDL cholesterol, LDL-C molecules, and that's great. So that's what you want. If your triglycerides were sky high and your HDL was quite low, then you would more likely have pattern B, the small, dense, damaged, glycated, oxidized, damaged, LDLs that have a 70% increased association with heart disease. But again, metabolic syndrome is 600% increase rate, and diabetes is 1000% increase rate, and smoking is around the same. So I just don't see these things as a major problem. LDL is just not associated with these things. If it was your SDLDL, okay, 1.7x, right? But you don't have SDLDL. You will almost certainly have pattern A. And so again, it's just cholesterol just simply was not the marker that we were told it was. It was a lie. For more on that, I do a big in-depth look at the literature and the published literature, peer-reviewed studies in the major medical journals around the world on the truth about cholesterol and heart disease. And it just goes through them. So people can watch that and know all they need to know about that. But if your HDL is high, especially if your HDL is equivocal or higher than your triglycerides, you are in very good stead. That's a sign of good metabolic health, and I would be happy with that. And again, higher LDL, any LDL, is associated with longer life. So what are we doing here? Why are we worrying about this? People with higher LDL live longer. So what the hell?
Right. All right. From Boris, question: as a carnivore bodybuilder, I can't seem to get enough food in, but adding carbs at 10 grams makes my brain work way less. Help for a hard gainer.
Yeah. So, the thing is that low carbs is worse than no carbs, because now you're going to ratchet up your insulin. You're going to cut off your ketones. Your brain wants to run on ketones. Now you're running out of the glucose. You don't have ketones. Your brain doesn't work. Your body doesn't work either. You're actually going to shoot yourself in the foot from a glycogen standpoint as well. Also, when you eat carbohydrates, you raise your insulin. Insulin blocks the secretion and action of growth hormone. And it also disrupts your testosterone as well. So this is not actually what you want. I don't think, that's a personal opinion, but it's not what I want. I don't want my growth hormone being blocked, especially if I'm trying to build muscle and be lean and athletic and strong. I want my growth hormone to be, up where it's supposed to be. So, this is why, why I think you shouldn't eat carbs before you go to bed, is because you raise your insulin, you maximally secrete growth hormone as when you're asleep, especially 2 hours after you go to sleep. As long as you go to sleep on time, that's very important. And so by jacking up your insulin, you're slowing that down. You're lowering the amount that your body's actually secreting, and you're blocking its action too. So you'll actually get a corresponding drop in your insulin-like growth factor 1, which is sort of how we test for the action and functionality and amount of HGH. So I would avoid carbs at all. If you wanted to go the other way and go back to the old way, you need more carbs than that. Like if you're going to run on carbs, you need to eat enough carbs to run on, and then you put on glycogen. You'd also put on fat. You get a bulk, right? So if you're going for a competition, probably a good idea to eat some carbs the night before, because you'll get that pump swell the next day, because you'll pack in a bunch of glycogen in your muscles. You'll also bring in water and that, and you'll get more of a plumped look. And so that's something that bodybuilders have done for a while, is that they just eat carbs just the night before a competition. From what I understand, and that gives them a big pump. Ronnie Coleman talks about that as well. Just the day before, you like eat a pizza and they just boom, you just like killed it the next day, just veins popping out and everything like that. Not something you want to do every day, to maintain that physique. However, just before, you're going to get that big glycogen water pump. As far as doing this carnivore and doing it right, so I have a number of interviews with professional bodybuilders who have won major tournaments, international tournaments, and things like that, like Richard Smith, who won the British national title as a pro, and that was a tested event. And so obviously he was not on juice. And then he won the European championship as a pro, and that was not a tested event, but he still won it naturally. So he beat people on steroids, even though he was natural, and he was doing that as carnivore. And so, yes, it's difficult. You just need to eat more. So you have to eat more often during the day. It's hard because, when you're working out, if you eat before that, you're just going to make yourself lethargic. You're going to put yourself into a rest and digest mode. You're going to, pump a bunch of blood towards your intestines, and that's blood that's not available for your brain and your muscles. So that's not great. But you can time these things. You can sort of eat a bit more. This is what Arnold Schwarzenegger did. He said this in his movie Pumping Iron, and this was back in the day when they just ate steak and eggs. It was just steak and eggs, because that's what the Iron Guru Vince Gironda used to say. You just eat steak and eggs all week. They had Sunday they would have a clean carb loading day, but the rest of the week was just steak and eggs. And when they were cutting, they would all carbs. That was just steak and eggs. That was it. And they were just getting shredded and jacked. And those were all the best performers. Arnold was of this school. He learned from these guys. He was the next generation down. And obviously he added, steroids to the equation and did very well. But the eating dynamic, he got from them. And so he just ate meat. And so he talks about this. He's like, I'm not like one of those guys. Why can't you just eat just all this meat? His body image idol was a guy named Serge Nubret, Nubret. He was a French guy. Man was jacked, absolutely jacked. He would eat 6 pounds of horse meat a day, right? And so, and Arnold was referring to these guys who could just eat copious amounts, like the Mongols. They would eat, they would ravage the countryside for 5 days in a row, not eating, and then they'd eat, 10 pounds of horse meat in one go, in one day or whatever, and then go do it again. So what Arnold was saying is just like, I've got to have, eggs here. I've got to have a, 10-ounce steak here, another 12-ounce steak there, another thing there, another this there, another this there. And he was just talking about meat. So you have to space it out. You have to, build this out through the day. You need to get enough. There's no real cheats to it. You just have to get the food in your mouth. And, so you have to do that multiple times throughout the day. If you eat too much, you're going to get lethargic. So if you're going to eat during the day and you still got to work out later, you want to eat sort of a half amount, just sort of take the edge off, have a bit now, a bit later, and then hit your workout, go really hard, eat a lot after that. Maybe you have 2 a days or something like that. Okay, give yourself several hours in between, then get another one. So this is a problem with my friend Ryan Talbot, the NCAA track star, right? So now he's got it down where he's able to eat enough, and he's the problem is he's putting on too much muscle, where before he was actually losing muscle. He was actually losing weight. He's like, hey, I'm losing too much weight. What do I do? And it was like, hey, you just have to eat more. You have to get these things in. You have to work these things in. So he's able to work those in. If he had a morning workout, morning session with the team, he would go and do that first, and then he'd eat after that, and go have another session and eat after that. So he just worked in extra meals throughout the day, and that's what you have to do too. You just have to do what Arnold did, is just sort of maybe get them in piecemeal, and then sort of after your main workouts in the evening, eat as much as you can. A couple hours later, try to eat as much as you can. If you got to eat more in the morning, do that, but just keep getting food in, but just stick to the fatty meat and water. 10 grams of fat or 10 grams of carb is going to really slow you down, and you're sort of be caught in the middle. You won't be one or the other, and you get sort of the worst of both worlds. And as far as energy wise, and so I would suggest just dropping the carbs altogether. But if you're going to have any carbs, you need to have enough carbs to actually fuel you.
All right. Barry Simon, $20 super chat. Dr. Chaffee, have you heard of Anthony William and his medical medium site? If so, opinions good or bad?
So I have heard of that. It's sort of an interesting concept, right? Someone would say a funny concept. I would say a funny concept. So he's an actual medium. As he says, I mean, who is an actual medium? I don't know. It was the amazing Randy was a magician who actually had in the 80s. He was saying, "I'll give you $1 million. Anybody, standing offer anyone in the world $1 million to prove scientifically that you have psychic powers. $1 million. No one. A lot of people took him up on it. No one actually was able to do it. So is this guy an actual medium? So this is a gentleman who says he's actually channeling spirits, and they're giving him medical advice. I don't know why they aren't giving him lottery numbers, but he said that he's channeling the spirit of compassion. I don't know if that's biblical. Probably not. This is just like I don't know what the spirit of compassion is. I don't know what that means. If there's a spirit of compassion, are there spirits of other sorts of feelings towards people? Presumably. Maybe the spirit of mischief is saying it's the spirit of compassion and actually leading him down the wrong way. But anyway, there's some sort of spirit guide that's actually giving him medical advice, and people are listening to this for some reason. And I haven't looked at a lot of the things that he said. I think some of the stuff he like plant-based, this and that, but he's actually giving medical advice on some of these things, which is not okay. That's actually illegal, and it's very dangerous. Telling people about different biochemical sort of pathways, and this is why this works. And I was like, no, that's really not. Like, I mean, I can show you any number of textbooks that are very clear on the biochemistry of that process, and that's not it. So no, I don't think that's someone you want to listen to. I mean, this is someone who maybe he believes this, but I would doubt that. I mean, there's been a lot of frauds and hucksters that say they have some sort of powers or whatever. I mean, you should look up on YouTube. There was like people in the 50s or and earlier that were all about this whole outer space alien sort of things, and just people just coming out of everywhere. Oh yeah, so my experience with aliens and all these sorts of things, just making up these stories. And when people was like, oh yes, I'm in psychic communication with Queen Azalea of the galaxy, and we talk on a daily. I mean, who the hell are you? Like, why would this person, if they actually were running the galaxy, like why are they talking to you? Like, I mean, we're not even interstellar yet. You don't even know about us or anything like that. But you're just going on. They're hilarious, right? But this is one of those things. I mean, I don't know the guy. But I mean, realistically, he's either delusional or a con artist, and I don't think that that's anyone you want to take medical advice from.
All right. Carmen, question. I bought a half a lamb and it comes with sausages made with rosemary and honey. Is that okay, or should I give it a miss? Cheers. Yeah,
just throw it at passing cars. Look, it's up to you. I don't like eating that stuff. It does make me feel worse. And so, I like feeling my best all the time. you could try them if you think it's okay. Maybe it has honey in it, that can trigger sugar cravings. It is addictive. Fructose is addictive, and honey tends to have more fructose than high fructose corn syrup. And fructose is the part that's actually chemically addictive to our brain. And so having that could trigger that. And if that's something, that you've had issues with in the past and had to, deal with sort of carb and sugar addicted, might be good to give it a miss. How much is in the sausages? Probably not all that much. And so, as sort of a one-off, is it that big of a deal? Just depends. It might be a big deal to you. It might be that you have some and it's a problem. But if you try them and you feel okay with them, and maybe they make you feel a bit gross or something like that, but it goes away and it's not causing you to go then down a carb hole and eat a whole bunch of sugar and things like that, then I would just have them while you're there, or maybe give them to other people who aren't too worried about it. And then the next time you do that, just ask them not to include that stuff in there. Just ask them just to use salt only. The thing with sausages too, they generally have different sorts of binders that are generally plant derived, so that when you cook that sausage and you cut it, it stays together. Whereas normally, if you don't have those plant derived binders, the meat just sort of falls out of the casing. So that's another thing too. So I tend to avoid things like sausages and those sorts of things. Occasionally, if I'm traveling or whatever, and there's something there, and I'm just sort of at a restaurant, I might have that. But I tend not to feel my best when I do that. And so if I see it has a whole bunch of green stuff and things like that in it, I generally give those a miss.
All right. Kitty, $10 super chat. Thank you. Question: 73-year-old female with 80 PKD, strict carnivore, 45 days, diagnosed with cyst infection 7 days ago, prescribed Levaquin 750 mg times 10 days. Would keto help this lipophilic AB enter the cyst?
That's a good question. I don't know if keto would help your antibiotic in its action in your body, but being on a ketogenic diet has been shown to improve your immune system. Your immune system runs better. Your cellular immunity works better. You're dropping inflammation. Your body's, what is inflammation? Inflammation is basically activating your immune system in inappropriate ways. So you're going to suppress that. You're not going to have inappropriate inflammation. Your body's just going to be doing the things that it needs to do, and your healing and your immune system actually works better. So I would say that. Now, to do with, I'm assuming that's talking about polycystic kidney disease. But the thing is that it's not something that I've seen myself, but I was literally just in a conversation today with one of the doctors from Low Carb Down Under over in Sydney, and there was a patient who sort of asked about polycystic kidney disease, and he referred me over to another doctor colleague of his that has basically been doing research in this. So I'm about to be communicating with them, because they said that there's actually a lot of promising research coming out with polycystic kidney disease and nutrition, which is great. I mean, most things are related to nutrition, and you have a genetic predisposition and then environmental trigger. So you have the genes for polycystic kidney disease. But that's not necessarily, you won't necessarily get a 100% penetrance. So not 100% of people who have the gene get the disease, right? And so something in the environment sort of triggering that. And so, that it could be that there's nutritional issues as well. So I'll be looking into that. I don't know exactly what they are. However, I can tell you that studies have, people say, oh yeah, polycystic disease, okay, you need to reduce your protein. I don't think that's a good idea. These studies, there are studies in with people looking at more protein actually increases and boosts kidney function. I don't think so. These were done with people with polycystic disease, so take that for what it is. But in most people, more protein, more meat, improved kidney function. And this is actually, I see this a lot all the time. People with kidney disease, stage 4 kidney failure. I've seen people come out of that and return normal kidney function, and that happens regularly. And we see this in the literature. More protein, you get improved kidney function. Some people will get freaked out because their urea goes up. So people track urea and creatinine, and they say, oh, these go up. That means your body's not clearing these. But then their urea goes up, and oh my gosh, your kidneys are being shot. But for some reason, the creatinine is exactly the same. So why is that? The urea goes up because you're metabolizing more amino acids, and so that's just a byproduct of amino acid degradation. And it's actually one of your body's strongest antioxidants. So it's actually a good thing. So you're doing good things in your bodies, so you don't need all those antioxidants in plants that actually come with a lot more oxidants than just antioxidants, because you're getting a lot more urea as well, and that's doing a lot of work there. So that can help kidney function, and there seems to be some ties in with ketogenic diets and polycystic disease, but I don't know if that's going to help bring the antibiotics into the cyst, though, unfortunately. But it can help in a lot of other ways that could help and support you or that person with recovery from that infection and from dealing with that illness.
Just real quick, because this is right on that same topic. You mentioned kidney failure. So Ali is asking, could someone with stage 4 kidney failure on dialysis do carnivore?
Oh, 100%. You can absolutely do carnivore. It doesn't matter what your medical condition is, you're still human. And so, either way, our biologically adapted and designed diet is going to be right and correct for you. So, it's important, especially when we're sick, to be eating a proper diet. And so I definitely have seen people with kidney failure improve on that. Now people on dialysis, can you improve off of that? That remains to be seen. I have seen anecdotally 3 people. Now there are studies showing that more protein improves kidney function. Okay, so that's in the literature, but past that is anecdotal. But I've seen it again and again and again. People improve kidney function even after stage 4, not being on dialysis yet. And I've seen 3 people so far on dialysis that have come off dialysis. It takes a long time. So one lady, it took 9 months. The other 2 people, it took over a year, but it happened. So, and I'm sort of keeping track of a few other people at the moment who are on dialysis and doing carnivore, and they're doing very well. And in fact, they're symptomatically much better. They're getting much healthier. They're not feeling as horrible before their dialysis as they were before, and things like that. So, either way, say, oh my God, that's going to trash their kidneys. What kidneys? They're already on dialysis, right? So, you don't get past total kidney failure, right? So it's not going to cause problems. It's not going to make them sick. It actually should improve them, right? You're giving your body more of what it needs to help itself and get better in every way, and you're eliminating out things that cause harm. There are a lot of plant toxins that are directly nephrotoxic, so they damage your kidneys, or they block them up and cause damage via blockages such as oxalate. So oxalate binds calcium. They form calcium oxalate stones. 75% of kidney stones or thereabouts are calcium oxalate stones, right? So you're eliminating all that stuff from your body. You're eliminating a lot of things that can harm your kidneys, and you're providing your body a lot of things that are actually beneficial for your kidneys. So yes, you can 100% do it. Will it get them off dialysis? I really hope so. I can't promise anything.
All right, DC, I have 2 questions. Is it true that during the ice ages, there was no fruit and honey at all? And what do you think about people that say to feel more energetic doing carnivore, add fruit and honey in moderation, of course?
You can get more energetic adding cocaine too, right? So, is that a good idea? I don't think so. I've got tons of energy. It is 11:38 at night where I am, and I've been at work since early this morning seeing patients, and now I'm talking a mile a minute because I have tons of energy. I have not eaten yet today. I feel fine. I have, I certainly haven't eaten any fruit or honey. So, no, you absolutely don't need fruit and honey, just like you don't need cocaine. You'll have tons of energy. You'll have plenty of energy, and you'll feel better than literally you ever have in your entire life if you're eating enough meat and giving yourself and eating enough fat and giving yourself what it needs. I think a lot of people that sort of go into the fruit and honey side of things, there are a lot of people that eat a lot of organs. They eat a lot of organ meats and liver, and you can actually get toxicities. You can get the hypervitaminosis A, which can tank your thyroid and make you feel pretty crappy, tank your hormones in other ways as well. And so, going on fruit and honey and things like that, that can actually increase your body's demand for vitamin A and other vitamins. And it could be that sort of levels you out a bit. I don't know. That's sort of just something I've been sort of throwing around in my head, but something's happening. And I tend to see people who do that are the ones that are eating a lot of liver. I've eaten liver 4 times in the last 10 years. Right. And so, beef and lamb liver. I've had cod liver, tins of cod liver and cod liver oil like a few times as well. But otherwise, no. As far as the ice ages are concerned, certainly there were fruit and honey in some areas, more towards the equator. And, some vegans and liars will say that, during the ice ages that people were just moving towards the equator and just kept eating, fruit and plants and all that sort of garbage, because it sort of, tells the lie that, if we're up in these ice shelves living as the way the Inuit do now, which is the natural state of humanity is the way the Inuits are living now, that, how they traditionally live anyway, how a lot of them are living is not how we're supposed to live. But, the ones living traditionally, that's how we lived. We lived in the ice. There was no plants at all in a lot of these places, and we're just eating meat. And so, people will say, oh, well, we were moving towards the equator and things like that. That is someone who has never looked at the fossil record. They're just hoping that's true because it shows that they're right about something. No, it's actually wrong. So as the ice shelves started coming down, the fossil record is very clear. We started going up. We started attacking into the ice because that's where the megafauna was, most likely. And that's what we were hunting. That's what we wanted to eat. These big fuzzy animals that, fed us and, made us warm. So that's what we were doing. And so while there were, fruits and vegetables and honey and all that sort of stuff available in certain areas, and I'm sure that Homo sapiens, or not Homo sapiens, in the last few ice ages would have been Homo sapiens, but not early on, would have been around that. Maybe those ones incorporated that. First of all, fruit's seasonal, and it's not nearly as sweet in the wild as it is in the store. I mean, think of the difference between, like a red delicious and a crab apple you found in a park somewhere. This is not the same creature. And so, it's sour, it's tart, it's not great, the crab apples, right? So we've bred these things to be many, many more times as sweet and have many, many more times the amount of sugar and have, much less fiber and things like that. I mean, look at mangoes, normally just all seed, bit of fibrous, meat and things like that, and barely any sugar. Now it's, seeds much smaller, whole bunch of, pulp, and it was just packed with sugar. And there are areas, and I spoke to when the research was coming out about how bad fructose was and how it was, really a causative factor in type 2 diabetes. I mentioned that to a friend of mine who's from India. He's a doctor. And he said, that's actually really interesting because there's an area in India, I forget the name of it at this point, it was, 12 years ago. But he said that in that area, the mangoes grow so plentiful that they're just falling all over the place. And just basically everyone there just eats mangoes for 3 months while they're in season. Just every day they're just eating mangoes. They don't eat anything else. And they have the highest rates of type 2 diabetes in all of India. And in fact, the government had to do an intervention and just say, you're not allowed to eat this. You have to eat other things. You can only eat a limited amount of mangoes a day because of that. So, sure, there was fruit and honey somewhere. It wasn't always available. It certainly wasn't as sweet as it is now. Honey would have been just as sweet probably, but the fruit would not have been as sweet. It'd also only be available for a couple of weeks and then not the rest of the year. And, and then fruit, and it would only be available in some places. A lot of people, most people were up in the icy areas where that stuff did not exist and we did not have access to it, even for part of the year. Most of the earth was covered in ice and year round, so some areas that would have thawed out, sure, but most people in most areas were not getting any of that. So we definitely didn't need it. There certainly wasn't any fruit and honey on the land bridge from Asia to North America on the last ice age when people crossed over and populated North and South America, right? So what were they eating, right? What do the Inuits eat? So if you have to have fruit or honey or carbs of any description, that doesn't happen. Those people don't survive. They don't survive generation after generation after generation, right? And that's actually been well established and admitted by different scientific bodies and medical bodies, that there is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. You do not have to consume plant-based carbohydrates at any point during your life, or honey at any point during your life. There are entire cultures and civilizations that don't eat any and have no deleterious health effects. And so that's not my words, that's theirs. And so you don't need any of that crap. And I think you don't want it, honestly.
All right. John Albert, 199. Thank you. Wow, we're approaching 1,200 people on here. This is awesome.
Oh, wow.
Dr. Chaffee, I know carnivores don't need any sleep or anything. Are you still good to go for a while and get through some more of these?
Yeah, no, fine, man. Yeah, let's do it.
John Albert also, what supplements should a carnivore take, and what processed meats are okay?
Oh, you really don't need supplements on a carnivore diet. Like, if you have to take supplements, then by definition, your diet is deficient, right? You're not getting what you need from your diet, right? Now, we're not eating woolly mammoth or wild horses or all that sort of stuff. The meat that we're eating isn't as nutritious as it could be. Like, if you get a cow that's on a regeneratively raised farm, grass-fed, grass-finished, it is going to have much more nutrients, 4 or 5 times the amount of vitamins and minerals that you'll get in Safeway beef. But Safeway beef is absolutely has an abundance of nutrients for the vast majority of people. Some people need a bit more. Some people metabolize things in different ways, so maybe they may not be able to process folate as well. And so maybe they need to eat a bit of liver. That's a supplement for carnivores, is liver. I don't think that's a mainstay of your meal, of your diet. I think that that's a supplement. You have some liver and some organs here and there, sort of keep things, topped up. But otherwise you don't need it. I've checked my bloods after not eating any organs for years and only eating meat for years. They were all in optimal ranges. And so I didn't have any problems. Most people don't have any problems just on Safeway beef, Costco beef, things like that. If you are one of these people, check your folate, check your B12, check your magnesium. You want to do your erythrocyte magnesium, erythrocyte zinc, erythrocyte folate. It's better. It looks at the levels in your cells, which is where these things are active. It's not as useful looking at your serum levels. And if those are all good, then great. You don't need to worry about anything. If they are, lower than they should be, or low normal, or whatever, you might need to just add in a bit of liver, once or twice a week. It doesn't have to be much. Processed meats, again, what are they processed with? It's not more meat. It's just a bunch of plants and sugar and artificial ingredients. So if you have processed meat, and ground beef is processed meat, right? But there's nothing added to it. So there's no issues. Bacon, you just look at the ingredients list, right? So if it has a long ingredients list with a bunch of words that you can't pronounce, don't get it, right? If it's something that has sort of few, maybe it has some, bit of sugar, a bit of this or whatever. Okay. It's not ideal, but, generally the amount of sugar that's sort of in bacon, it's a bit of in the cure, and you look at, it's less than, 1 gram per serving and all that sort of stuff. You just want to get it as clean as possible. So, the meat part of the processed meat is not the problem. It's whatever else is in it. So just look at the ingredients list. If it has a big, long, horrible ingredients list, don't get it. A lot of the processed meats, if that's what you can afford, then, get it. It's better than the alternative anyway. But if you look at the ingredients quite often in sort of like sausages, or like summer sausages or bologna or these sorts of things, you look at the ingredients list and it'll say, 75%, pork or something like that. And it'll do the other thing. Okay. What does that mean? That means that 25% of it is not animal, right? So 25% of this is plant-based starch and fillers and garbage like that, which are cheaper. And that's why they put all that stuff in it. And so if you have that where it's just like 67%, whatever, it's like, okay, so that means that there's a lot of other stuff in here that I don't want. So I would just sort of just check the ingredients list and try to go for the ones that have as few ingredients as possible, and hopefully ones that you recognize and can pronounce.
All right. The Graham, I have Achilles tendonitis. Can I expect my ribeye tonight to cure this tonight? I'll have it no matter what. I can answer that. Yes. Next question. Carnivores don't get Achilles tendonitis either. I'm pretty sure on that one, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there must be something else with that ribeye. If you have Achilles tendonitis, I think that's it.
right.
You're showing your card. But yeah, of course, I think that's a tongue in cheek sort of thing. Yeah, no, of course that's not gonna cure it tonight. But you'll reduce inflammation, and that can significantly help reduce the pain and the symptoms that you have. Ketones, just having higher ketones, directly suppresses inflammation. Not eating a lot of other things that cause inflammation also reduce the body of inflammation that you have. And so people do find that they have much less pain as a result of that, which is great. So, take it easy, rehab it properly. But yeah, you can expect to heal faster on a carnivore diet than you would have otherwise. Absolutely.
Speaking of inflammation, just real quick, I had this guy come into the theater the other day, Shane. He was like, you're not going to believe this. I've only been doing carnivore for like 3 weeks and I've had back pain for decades and it's completely gone. It's like inflammation. So many people are walking around with inflammation. I say it a lot on my channel, but you need to know what it's like to live without inflammation. I had back pain for years too. And I always thought it was, this is just the way it is. I must have injured myself at some point and it's just always going to be that way. 3 weeks on carnivore, no more back pain ever again. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
Jessica, day 32 on carnivore diet. Is it possible to eat too much protein in a meal? Already eating 4 eggs, 2 7-ounce burgers for breakfast, 12-ounce steak for dinner, plus butter. Still not feeling satiated. Thank you, Dr. Chaffee, for all you do.
What's too much. It's sort of the thing is how long is a piece of string? It varies, right? So it's different for different people. The thing about eating too much on a carnivore diet is it's very difficult. Your body stops enjoying it very quickly. If you're eating a lot of lean meat and you're getting a lot more protein than fat, and your body wants the fat, that it's going to stop tasting good, and you're still going to go, I still want to eat. I don't want to eat that. And all of a sudden you add some butter to it, add some fat to it. You go, okay, I like that again. That's good now because your body's saying, okay, yes, we want those nutrients. We don't need those as much. We have enough of those. And so if you're eating those sorts of things and that's not enough, then you need to eat more. Pretty simple. And so, some people will say that you can only absorb a certain amount of protein, like 40 grams of protein a day. To me, that doesn't even pass a smell test, because like you get a lion that's taking down a gazelle once a week, right? So they're only getting 40 grams of protein or however much a lion gets, but then all that, the extra 6 pounds of gazelle is just pooping out? Probably not, right? So they're absorbing that, and you can see this too very clearly, in your own ways, is that you're not going to be eliminating this out. If you eat a kilo of steak, right? 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds of meat, right? Or sometimes when I'm working out, I'll eat like 4 to 5 pounds of meat in a day, and it's very easy to put on muscle then. When I'm working out, I'm eating that much. And my body's asking me to eat that much because that's how much it's wanting. That's not just coming out the next day. I absorb that. I absorb all of that. And so, that doesn't really work. If I'm eating once a day and I'm eating hundreds of grams, how do you put on muscle if you're only going to absorb 40 grams? I'm 240 pounds. And so I'm eating once a day and I'm putting on muscle regularly, and I'm certainly not wasting away, and I'm only getting 40 grams a day. Well, clearly not. I'm clearly absorbing a lot more of that, and animals in the wild do too. Predators, carnivores, they eat infrequently. Generally, they don't necessarily eat every day. Smaller animals may be getting a whole bunch of little lizards and insects and bugs and things like that. Big prey animals tend to like take down a big piece of game, like a poker player, they take down one big pot an hour or something like that. And that's sort of what they have to average. That's like us. That's like lions. That's like, cheetahs and things like that. They have to take down, one big thing every few days or once a week or something like that. And that's how they work. And they need to get everything out of that, in that session from eating that thing in that time to last them another week. So, no, I think you are fine. You're not going to hurt yourself anyway by eating more protein. It's just going to taste bad, so keep eating until meat stops tasting good. Fatty meat. So you're eating fatty meat and you're getting the fat with the meat aim for about gram for gram, and then adjust from there based on your own your own body. But it's you just need to keep eating until meat stops tasting good. Fatty meat stops tasting good. Your body knows what it's doing. Your body is much more in tune and in touch than any so-called expert. Anybody has a formula or a calculator or whatever, it should not be trusted, because like the formula to figure out our biochemistry is about 38 miles long in small print, right? So you're not going to figure that out. No one's going to figure that out to exacting degrees. No one's going to figure it out as much as your body already knows it. So if you stay out of your body's way, you don't disrupt your biochemistry by eating things that you shouldn't, and you're only eating fatty meat, your body will tell you what to do, and your body will figure everything out.
Yes. Listen to your body. Brett Atwood, $20, just a little money for the documentary. I want to thank Dr. Chaffee for how committed he has been to shout from the rooftops. Everyone deserves to feel this good. Down 90 pounds, reverse type 2 diabetes, and so many other wins. Amazing. Yeah. Anyone who's watching this from my channel, please go make sure you're subscribed to Dr. Chaffee. We need to elevate more voices like his for sure. And thank you, Brett, so much for the donation for the documentary. We need it. We're going to reach more bills because of it. So I really appreciate that. Candy and Sean, $5. Thank you so much. Stacy says, no colon, J pouch patient, a few months on carnivore, no more pain. Labs are great.
Nice.
Hemoglobin highest it's ever been. Will I still need iron B12 supplements forever because of no colon?
Oh no, not because of no colon. You absorb B12 in your small intestine. So before you get to the colon. So if you still have the majority of your small intestine, you should be fine. Now that doesn't mean that you don't have other problems, upstream that are going to interrupt that. If you had damage to your stomach, you can get pernicious anemia. It's an autoimmune issue. Or if you had surgery, damage and took out the part of your stomach that made intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor needs to be released from your stomach and bind to B12, and then you absorb it in your distal ileum, I believe. And it's been a long time since I looked at that. But anyway, in your small intestine. And so, it goes down there and absorbs there, but it needs to be bound to intrinsic factor. So if you're not making that anymore, you're not releasing that, or that part of your stomach was taken out or damaged, then you may not be able to do that. Iron, you should be able to absorb pretty well. Heme iron is obviously much more bioavailable than any other source of iron. And that's what you're getting with meat, especially red meat, getting the myoglobin and things like that. So drink those juices, and and that should be fine. Other thing, it's sort of gross, but the Maasai drink blood, and that's going to be your best available source of iron there, because it's just tons and tons and tons of hemoglobin, and that's what your body needs it for anyway. So that's awesome. I'm really glad that you're doing so well. I'm glad your labs are great. You just need to keep checking, your nutrients and things like that. Most of your nutrients will be absorbed in your small intestine. So if you still have most of that, you should be fine. And meat is the most bioavailable nutrient source that there is. And so, but there's obviously more to your story there. So just keep checking. And if you check your bloods and your minerals and vitamins every 3 months or so, and it's consistently in good areas, and you want to try coming off supplements or whatever, and you maintain those levels without that, then that's great. Then you can come off of that, but you need to test it. You need to test your levels, and you need to test what your body does when you come off supplements. You try that, and if it's coming down and too low, then unfortunately you'll need to stay on. But hopefully you don't need to.
Carnivorous Dude, $1. Thank you so much. Molly Malone, $5. Carnivorous Dude, my mom has an ulcer in her colon and is worried about red meat.
Yeah, I wonder what the ulcers caused from. Is that like an autoimmune condition or some sort of infection, or what? People have ulcerative colitis. That would need a biopsy to sort of diagnose that. If that's the case, that will respond extraordinarily well to a red meat and water diet. Most autoimmune issues respond extraordinarily well to elimination diets. There was actually a study with Crohn's disease patients who were having were very symptomatic and having flare-ups, 20, 30 bouts of bloody diarrhea a day, and that's typical for Crohn's sufferers in a bad flare-up. And they found that putting people on an elemental diet, which is just a very highly processed sort of shake with all the different nutrients and things like that that you need. And I've spoken to people that actually prefer the ones that are for keto, the keto ones for epilepsy, and they do better on those. The ones I've spoken to do better on those. So it's just the nutrients you need, nothing you don't need, right? That's what a steak is, right? And so they found that putting people on elemental diet was a better treatment for an acute attack of Crohn's disease than prednisone, right? Or prednisolone if you're outside of the US. That is crazy. That's the gold standard. That's a major, major, major immune blocker that just absolutely suppresses the immune function and should just stop your body from being able to attack anything, let alone your intestines, right? And it was a better treatment to just not eat garbage, right? So you just cut that crap out of your system, and that was better treatment than steroids, right? So if your mom has like immune issues will improve in a lot of ways. Autoimmune issues improve. We do see studies with ulcerative Crohn's, which is akin to ulcerative colitis, and people do very, very well on ulcerative colitis as well with these sorts of treatments and interventions as well. People get worried about red meat. We're told by our doctors we should be worried about red meat, especially with bowel issues. But going back to earlier with the whole idea about colon cancer and colon disease and all this stuff, it is absolutely not borne out by the evidence. It is simply not borne out by the data in the literature. The data in the literature shows that meat is healthy. Red meat in particular is very healthy. There's absolutely no association in any well-designed, high-level study between red meat or meat in general and any sort of disease at all whatsoever, full stop.
Blanco, 2,500. I think that's Argentinian. Thank you. And then there's a question
Nice.
a little
Thank
bit
you,
lower.
sir.
Linda, $2. Thank you. Brett's a new member. Awesome. And then Blanco's question, forgot the question. Can I be on top health drinking whole milk? I'm very tolerant to it. And my thinking is there's an extensive historical evidence that it is good. Like you said, the Ethiopians described by Herodotus are most known, the Indo-European conquerors.
Yeah. It depends. You're tolerant of it. That's good. The Maasai drink a whole bunch of this stuff. Raw milk is a very different creature to, pasteurized, homogenized milk. Very different things. And so, if you're getting grass-fed raw milk, whole milk unpasteurized, not homogenized milk, then that's different. I do think that milk, because of its lactose content, is a bit problematic. It's going to increase your insulin and your blood sugar, and you're going to kick yourself out of metabolic state that you want to be in. So as a treat, every now and then, great. The Maasai do great with it. So you can certainly be very healthy drinking raw whole milk. If you're just drinking normal whole milk, you'll see a lot of people who drink a lot of milk. You're just jacking up your insulin, and you can have sort of inflammation. People can put on weight as well, and so that's just something to think about. But if you like that, I would just sort of maybe just have it occasionally, and try to reduce the amount of total carbs you're coming in. The Maasai as well. There was a study, which is actually a great study, looking between the Maasai and the Akikuyu that were like the bordering, tribes and people, and they're actually largely plant-based. So they're eating just sort of just whole food, plant-based diet. All these different things that they grow and they find, largely not as much meat. The Maasai eating mostly meat, mostly dairy, mostly blood from their cattle, if not exclusively, and they found that the Maasai were much, much healthier. So on average, 5 inches taller, larger brains, better teeth, 23 pounds heavier on average. And they're just lean. These guys are just, jet skinny, and 50% stronger, right? And they weren't getting diabetes and all these different chronic diseases and, lung infections and tropical ulcers and all these sorts of other things. And they weren't anemic. The Akikuyu were anemic and had a lot of vitamin deficiencies. And they tried to correct the vitamin deficiencies, and they found that their health actually didn't improve. It wasn't until they actually, reduced the amount of plants they were eating and started giving them meat, that their health actually improved. Obviously, they didn't just grow 5 inches after that, but they did improve their health. Now, one thing that they did find in the Maasai was that they didn't have arthritis, but they had more like rheumatoid factor. So that there's some sort of inflammatory sort of process that you have this sort of factor that starts coming up and is strongly associated with rheumatoid arthritis. Now, it's not a 1-to-1. If you have that, you just have more of a chance, of getting it. But it doesn't seem that they like fully develop arthritis, but it does seem to raise a bit of that inflammation that we can see in autoimmunity, such as rheumatoid arthritis. So that's just something to think about. The casein can be pro-inflammatory. The A1 protein is, most people find that it's quite inflammatory. A2 is less inflammatory, but operative word there is less, not inflammatory. So it is still inflammatory. It's just less inflammatory. You're going to have to make a judgment call for yourself. If that's something that you like, you're staying lean, slim, and strong. Fine. Kids who drink more dairy or have more dairy on average grow taller and have, better bone density. Would they be as good just eating meat? Probably, maybe even better. But for me, I don't drink a lot of milk. Every now and then when I get my hands on some raw milk, like I drink the hell out of that. It's illegal in Australia, so that's just not really happening every now and then. It's hard to get in America, but it's delicious. But I also think of that as a bit of a problem, because I don't want to be like craving something. I don't want to be like, oh my God, I want that. I want to have my life to myself and just eat meat when I'm hungry and then just get on with my life. And if something's causing me to have cravings, I think it's probably not a great thing. So for me, I tend to avoid that. What I recommend to people is probably best to avoid milk, even, raw, whole milk, just because of the carbs. You're going to start bringing up your insulin. You're going to, raise your blood sugar. You're going to raise your insulin, and you're going to disrupt your normal hormonal and metabolic functioning. So for me, it's a treat every now and then, but certainly not something I would do on a regular basis.
All right. Well, I think you kind of just covered this question. I don't know if you want to add anything, Dr. Pepper.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, also just, just dairy in general. If it's raw is much better than the rest, right? And dairy that's been fermented and has that carbohydrates taken away, much better, and you're going to get some of those live culture bacteria and things like that, which can be good. If you're just eating meat, you're going to have a very healthy gut bacteria, as we see in studies with the Inuit, that just eat meat. They have really, really good gut biota. And but I was just saying, just another thought that I had about the last one is sort of thinking about our ancestors and things like that ate milk. We haven't really been using dairy for all that long, so not going back past the last ice age. We don't think, so it is more of a new adaptation, probably because the megafauna died off and we don't have these big, large, fatty animals. The larger the animals have more fat, and then we really do need the fat. And so we probably started cultivating, dairy animals in order to get more fat and have more of an access to fatty acids. But either way, I think it's probably not ideal if you have access to big fatty steaks, which you should do in Argentina. That's just steak Graceland, really.
Jen S, $1.99. Thank you. Name redacted, $5. What are your thoughts on lean mass hyper responders? Should they be concerned about high LDL?
No, I don't think so. I just don't think that that LDL and all these sorts of things were the issue that we've been told that it was. So there's a guy Dave Feldman, who's doing a ton of research in this, and so it's it's worthwhile looking at his research on the subject. But when you look at just LDL in general, it was a con. and a lot of these things have now been shown to be a con. And there are more and more large, very well designed, high level studies that are showing that higher LDL is not an issue. And there are randomized controlled trials with thousands of people, sometimes tens of thousands of people, showing that you intervene, you give somebody unsaturated fat and you lower their LDL cholesterol. And then what happens? They start dying of heart attacks and strokes, right? Not a great outcome, right? So am I worried about high LDL? No, it means you're going to live longer on average, right? Also, your LDL fluctuates quite wildly early on. And so I never check, or I never pay attention to, or I don't want to check cholesterol within the first 6 months. A lot of weird things are going to happen there. After about 6 months, things to start to settle down a bit. Your LDL is going to be a bit higher, or it could be low, or it could be normal. You want it to be at least in the normal range, probably in a bit of a higher range, according to various studies that show that people live longer and get less heart disease and strokes and cancer and things like that, and infectious disease. So a lot of associations with higher LDL that are actually very positive in a number of different studies. So, and then you look at the familial hypercholesterolemia patients are like, oh my God, these people die more. Not really. In the earlier decades of life, they have a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, death from cardiovascular disease. Sure. And then after about age 50, it's even, right? So they have the same die-off rate. After that, after 70, it's actually lower. They have lower rates of cardiovascular disease and death. So what's going on there? Well, they seem to also have other genetic issues, right? So they found that people with familial high cholesterol, that as a genetic issue, that they also are more likely to have a gene that makes them clot more easily. So what is a heart attack? What is a stroke? It's a clot where it's not supposed to be, right? You block off blood supply, and that part of the body dies, right? If it's an important part, that's a big deal. And so that's what a heart attack and a stroke is. And so when they differentiated out that people that just have massively elevated genetic reasons for having high cholesterol, and the people that had the high cholesterol but also had the clotting factor, it was only those with the clotting factor that had increased risk of heart disease. So just having massively elevated cholesterol did not increase your risk for heart disease compared to the rest of the population. So yeah, it's literally, LDL is probably my least concern as a doctor. I can't think of much else that I just care less about. Yeah.
All right. Craigamus, $1.99. Craigamus, $1.99. Thank you. Carnivore Today. This is my good friend Adam, $5. Thank you. Love this comment too. Everyone should check out Carnivore Today. He's been volunteering his time to help me with the documentary movie. It's been awesome.
Oh, nice.
Who would pay good? I would. Who would pay good money to see Dr. Chaffee play a rugby match against a team of Kellogg's and Pfizer execs?
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Oh my God, that'd be fun. Just tee off on those guys. Oh, that'd be great.
Miguel Ortiz, $10. When will the bile poop stop? 8 weeks in on meat and dairy only. No bile if I start my meal with dairy, ? Also, any tip for food that I can take on a 30+ mile bike ride? Thank you both for all you do.
Yeah, well, that's it. So I don't know exactly what you mean by bile poop. Maybe it's sort of greenish. I don't know if you mean, maybe you're having diarrhea or something like that. If it's diarrhea, it's more fat than your body can absorb, or you're still drinking coffee or your tea or using artificial sweeteners. All of those are laxatives, right? So if you're only eating meat, only drinking water, you should have normal stools. Dairy can actually make you constipated. That can actually harden things up, even if you're already eating a lot of fat. So it's a bit of a weird one there, but no bile if I start my meal with dairy. That's interesting. I don't know if you're talking about, it sounds like you're talking about having like sort of green bile in your stools, which is not typical. I haven't really seen that before. But whatever you do, if you sort of eat something in a certain way and you're not having the problems that you're that you're worried about, just do it that way. There's so many things in medicine that we don't really know exactly what's going on, and it doesn't really matter because it's sort of the solution is still right there in front of you. People say it's like, oh well, it hurts when I do this. Okay, well stop doing that. Like then problem solved. And so that's the thing here. So if you're not having that problem, if you start a meal with dairy or something like that, great. Just do it like that. Tips for a bike ride. The thing is that a lot of long distance endurance athletes and cyclists and things like that aren't eating at all. They're going fasted. They're just drinking water, and you feel fine. You'll be fine. If you're just eating meat and just drinking water, you have plenty of fat stores. That is your food. That's what you're carrying with you. That is your larder, right? And so you'll be fine on a 30-mile ride as long as you're eating enough prior to that. As long as you're eating enough in the days leading up to that, and just in general you're healthy and you have a lot of healthy weight on you, you'll be fine. The things that you may want to eat, if you feel like doing that, first of all, you generally don't need refeeds. There's a lot of cyclists like Sean Seiko Sapanowski, who's in South Africa, and he works with the Noakes Foundation, and he's high level elite cyclist, and he just does carnivore. He's been doing keto for years, and he's doing just full carnivore now, and he does 200 K cycles and things like that. At competitive sort of races, finished top 5 in one. It was like in Jordan, so it's like just crazy heat. And 200 kilometers, and he's in his 50s, and he finished in I think 5th. So that was actually quite a big result. He ate nothing the entire time. Everyone else is like, oh my god, I'm dying, and the pace cars around them, giving them a bunch of like sugary snacks and refeed things. They're just sucking it down. They're like dying, and he's just like, okay, yeah, I'm fine, and he just kept going. And but if you wanted something, you just want animal stuff. So pemmican is amazing. That's what the Native Americans used to eat. They used to be the iron rations in a lot of armies throughout history. And that's just ground up, dried, powdered meat mixed with liquid tallow. And you just sort of mix that up, you let it dry and harden, you just sort of eat that. Or if you just want sort of the energy or whatever, again, you'll have more than enough energy. You can just bring the tallow. You can just bring a sort of a Slurpee pack full of, sort of tallow. You have it sort of warm up, and you just sort of slurp that down. You'll just get, a few hundred calories, right there, if not, over 1,000. So, that is, that's the sort of thing that I would do. But yeah, I really don't think you would actually need it. It's sort of weird to think about, but once you get, adapted, your system gets adapted to running on fat, you'll find that you probably don't need that at all.
Tanya, thank you for the priceless information, life-changing from Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you, Tanya. I appreciate that.
Michelle says, hi, I'm 45 years old and been on carnivore diet since the 7th of July and have bursitis in the hip. Would that go away on carnivore?
Well, it's one of those things that it can help significantly. And, like we were talking about earlier, people with that significantly reduce their pain by reducing the inflammation. It can definitely help that. It may not completely fix your bursitis, but it should reduce your pain and your symptoms. And in a lot of people, it can get rid of it. If it gets rid of all of it for you, then that's amazing. I can't say for sure. There's a lot of other things that are going on that contribute to these things, but it will reduce your inflammation significantly, and that can reduce the amount of pain that you're feeling. And bursitis is just the inflammation and swelling and irritation of one of your bursa sacs, right? So if that is reducing that inflammation and your body sort of working a bit better, it can hopefully heal that. But some of these sort of chronic issues that you've had for a long time, some of those things tend to linger, but there's a good chance that it will help significantly and could get rid of it, but sort of only time will tell with that one.
All right. One hope for all. I don't eat organ meat, but I do have grass-fed beef liver, 4,500 mg supplement. Is that good to have if you're not eating the actual organ meats?
You may not even need to eat that, honestly. So, it's the supplement is going to be more expensive than just getting some beef liver. just having some liver every now and then. If you cook it right, you I sort of sear the outside and leave the inside pretty much raw. Tastes so much better like that. And so it's actually not that bad, but I rarely use liver. And if I do, it's just sort of, okay, why not? But if you're one of those that, you're checking your bloods and you need a bit more folate, or you need a bit more of this or that, it's a good idea just to eat liver, just have a bit of that and just learn how to cook it in a way that you like it. But most people don't need to eat liver or take supplements. If you just really don't want to eat liver, and you are one of those people who need a bit more, folate or whatever, and you just really can't handle that, then sure, having that supplement, should be fine. But I think it's best to do it just getting with the liver. It's cheaper for you too, and so that's what I would suggest anyway.
All right. I'm going to mess this name up. Korean. I just received a reaction on Instagram. Oh, this is a good one. Pesticides concentrate and accumulate in the meat of animals anywhere from 20 times to 100 times the amount that's on produce. Can you please debunk this for me?
Yeah. I mean, do they? What's the evidence for that? Did they provide a study or anything like that? Or are they just making that claim? It's like there's people that claim that, when the ice sheets came down, that people moved towards the equator. They've literally just made that shit up. So it's like, okay, what's your evidence for that? So ask them. Anytime someone puts someone forward like that, is just like, okay, can you produce a scientific article that shows that? And fine. Okay, so how much in one steak, in 3 ounces, and what are we talking about? 100 times in the whole cow? Okay, well then it's nothing. You don't care about that, right? So and also ruminant animals are actually really good at destroying pesticides and other sorts of things. There was actually a recent study that came out that talking about glyphosate, so Roundup, and ruminant animals apparently can just burn through that stuff, never absorb it in the first place. So this could also be an argument for why monogastrics like chickens, pig, fish, if they're farmed, are being fed garbage, that some people have problems with that, right? And they don't have as much problems with red meat, ruminant animals, right? Because the monogastrics aren't going to be able to eliminate this stuff out. And so it's not just the pesticides. First of all, there are 10,000 times more naturally occurring pesticides and insecticides in the plant itself by weight, right? So the plants are worse than the pesticides. So pesticides aren't really an issue. If you're eating the plants, or the animals eating the plants, it's not able to detoxify the plants well enough. That's the problem. It's not the pesticides. And those same pesticides, when compared to this an equivocal amount of pesticides will be sprayed on, like a serving of mushrooms, or compared it to mushrooms, the mushrooms were 500 times more likely to cause cancer than the pesticides that we used on them. Okay. So, ask them for their sources, make sure they're not just completely full of shit. Saying what we're talking here is that per 3 ounces, 20 times the amount that's on the produce. Is it though? And for how much? So you have a 3 ounce piece of meat, and that's going to have 20 times the amount of pesticide that's going to be on 3 ounces of spinach. I doubt it, but if it is, tell them to back it up. And also ruminants likely won't have that issue anyway. But I suspect this guy's completely full of shit, honestly.
Molly Malone, $2. Stacy Shearer, following up, I was simply a UC patient, colitis patient who ended up with a J pouch. Now I have Crohn's. Carnivore to the rescue. Thank you, Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I feel you've given me my life back.
Oh, good. Yeah, that will go away. I'm sorry that you had to get your colon taken away before you found this with your ulcerative colitis, because that would have gone away too. It's from the food that we're eating that is causing these diseases, especially for things like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's and other autoimmune issues. But the good news is you have your J pouch, and now you know how to protect it. Get rid of all plants. You need to be very, very strict. when people have these sort of roaring autoimmune issues, you need to be more strict than other people. So you need to be really just red meat and water. Like that's it. And grass finished red meat and water, if you can get it. You might just be just fine with, grain finished, but if it's still causing you a bit of problem, then, grass fed and finished is your holy grail.
That's amazing too. Like, how does it feel, Dr. Chaffee, getting a comment from Stacy? I feel you've given me my life back. I'm sure you get many comments like that. Fire you up or what? Jeez.
No, it's amazing. And it's, it's why, this is, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of stuff that goes into this. It's a lot of dealing with, assholes and idiots. And, that's not always fun, but, but that's why you do it. Because you reach people like that, and you can just impart this knowledge. This is like, this is available for people, but they just don't know it because they're not being told it. Their doctors don't know it often, and they're not telling it if they do, because they're just so used to just, pushing out pills and like, oh, that's not enough, so let's just chop out, whatever the hell it is. And I just don't agree with that. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think that's a bastardization and corruption of medicine. Medicine is a beautiful profession. It's an amazing application of science, and it's been completely corrupted and taken over. And I want it back. These are not the reasons that I got into medicine. These are not the reasons that I, as a kid, was interested in being a doctor. It's absolutely not it. I was interested in being a doctor to actually help people and to get them better, and to help them. If they had an accident or something happened or whatever, you were there to help them, and you could help fix them and say, hey, this is what's going on. Let's fix this. Now it's just, here's a problem. Here's a pill. That's how people are trained. Pills aren't working. Okay, let's chop it out. No, that is wrong. That's not what we've been doing for thousands of years. And that's really not what we've been doing for, even, more than, really 50 years. Before that, we had much better medicine, and people understood diet and nutrition better than they do now. Before, it was utterly corrupted, and there were much less chronic diseases. So we were treating accidents and emergencies and childbirth and all these other sorts of things that we could actually help with. And now it's just 90% of what we do is just chronic diseases that do not need to exist. None of them need to exist. You just stop eating things that are inappropriate for your biology, they will go away. Right? You can have other exposures as well, and that can be a problem. The vast majority of these things are coming from what we're eating. If you just eat what your body's designed to eat, it will work the way it's designed to work. And most of these problems will go away. The vast majority of these problems will go away. And, I just don't think it's okay for people to profit off, people suffering. I just think it's sick. And so, I want people to be healthy. I want them to be able to know what they need to know so they can just be healthy on their own. You can have these, little trolls and things like that in the comments. Who gives a shit? They're just not going to get it, like more meat for us. Like if they don't want to help their health, if they don't want to have an open mind and go like, okay, well, maybe I'll try it, and go, holy shit, I'm coming off medications and I'm helping myself and I'm feeling better. Maybe I'll look into this more, or maybe look into it more first of all before you talk trash, and then see what you think. But either way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they do. That's the whole point. Is that when we're at the whim of the system, when we're at the whim of the medical establishment, we just, oh gosh, there's just this thing happening to me, and I'm talking to my doctor, and we just don't know, and it's just getting worse, and you're completely out of control. Your life is not your own. The direction of your ship is not in your control. You're just in a storm, and you're just being whipped around. You have no idea and no control. That's really not a nice place to be. So, that's a problem, because you're relying on everybody else, and everybody else is failing you. And so, being able to just, get that back and have control is so empowering. And so it doesn't matter what these people say. It doesn't matter what other doctors say. It doesn't matter. Because your illnesses are going away. You are coming off of medications. You are getting objectively better by every physical and medical objective marker, except LDL, but who gives a shit? And so, and it is better. It's just not better according to people who don't know better. So you're getting better in all these things. It doesn't matter what they think. because now this is in your control. You're controlling this. You're doing this. You're getting better, right? You don't need them to get better. Mm-hmm. That's why a lot of people don't like this, because a lot of people have made their fortunes off of you needing them. You don't need them, right? And you don't need this guy to agree with you, or any of the trolls to agree with you, or any idiots say, "Oh, you're 100 times the amount of." No, you don't. And even if you did, so what? It's still better than the alternative, right? And just get cows that haven't been given a bunch of pesticide covered crap. Grass is fine, right? Mm-hmm. It's preferred. And so, you don't need them to agree with you. You don't need them to be convinced. You don't need any of these people. All you need to do is eat properly, and that'll take care of the rest, and we'll have a whole bunch of people around the world, independent, healthy, and strong, knowing that they can live their own life, knowing that they can keep themselves healthy. And that is a powerful force to reckon with.
Absolutely. And like for Stacy here too, with colitis and Crohn's, I've known so many people over my life that have had those two things. It's horrible. And just imagine how many people are out there right now suffering from colitis or Crohn's disease that don't even know this is an option yet. That's why we got to get the word out. That's kind of the whole thought behind the Carnivore Diet movie too, is reach people that are hopeless. They think all they can do is take medication, and they're suffering with these things for years and years, and it's needless. Vic, $5. Dr. Chaffee, I'm starting my day 1 of 31-day carnivore challenge today. Your opinion on fish and seafood like shrimp and lobster? I spearfish. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, get as much as you can, man. Like any meat's fine. So any animal flesh is fine. Obviously excluding any poison sacs and fugu liver and things like that. But any sort of normally eaten meats are fine. So whatever you enjoy makes you feel good, and that you can afford and have access to, right? So if you do fine with fish, seafood, and shellfish, then go for it. That's great. And if you're a spearfisher, obviously you've been doing this for a while and you presumably enjoy it, and you just find if that's helping you and you're feeling good, great. You need fat. A lot of that stuff that you described there are not all that fatty, depending on the kind of fish that you're getting. Add butter, basically. Most people do fine with butter. If you have autoimmune issues, maybe you have to be careful, maybe some grass-fed tallow or something like that, but you need fat. Just remember, you do need fat. And so go to town on that, and just add butter, grass-fed butter. Be great.
All right. Canada is a corp, $5. Good day. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. My grandson has cerebral palsy. Is there any indications regarding carnivore and recovery on any basis?
So only anecdotal, for cerebral palsy. Now there are studies showing that ketogenic diets improve outcomes and healing and recovery from like traumatic brain injuries and other sort of damage you get from like strokes and things like that. Okay, so that is shown in the peer-reviewed literature, and so you can sort of extrapolate that to other sort of damaged areas of the nervous system, right? Cerebral palsy is generally a stable lesion, that's present at birth that doesn't get better or worse over time. That's how it's described, sort of as a loose definition from the textbooks. However, I have seen people. I had a guy on my podcast, David Mack, who had a stroke 30 years ago, even did keto, even did Atkins, did all these different sorts of things. And he had weakness down his right side, pretty stable for 30 years. But he was quite weak and had difficulty walking, had difficulty going up and down stairs, very bad balance issues. 2 months on a carnivore diet, his wife was saying, like, hey, you're walking different. You're walking like normal. He's like, wait, what, really? Videotaped him. He's like, oh my God, you're right. This is crazy. All of a sudden he's running up and down stairs. He doesn't have any balance issues, doesn't have any problems going up and down stairs. 30 years after he's had a stroke and damage to his brain. That should be permanent. That should be 100% permanent. Apparently he was able to recover. There are a lot of things. There's BDNF, is a brain-derived neurotropic factor that increases with ketones, more BDNF, and exercise can help that as well. So that can cause healing and structure and regrowth and new connections from your brain tissue. You have exactly the same amount of nerve cells. If they have more connections, your brain works better. That's how that works. So there's potential there. I have spoken to one person who has cerebral palsy, and they seem to think that their neurological issues were improving. So that's just one person that's just told me their story. And, I don't know anything else, but it's promising. And either way, it's going to help in 1,000 different ways. It's going to definitely be beneficial in a lot of other ways. It can help maximize his neurological development and maximize, everything outside of that lesion. Can it fix that lesion? It's probably not going to fix it all the way. Could it help mitigate some of the problems? Absolutely. Could it help reverse some of it? I have no idea. One person seems to think, as an adult, that their symptoms of their neurological issues are improving. If they're still young and still developing, they'll probably get more out of it. As far as recovery is concerned, or at least the other parts of the brain compensating for the damage there. But either way, it's going to help them a lot. It's going to make them feel a lot better. It's going to make them a lot healthier in a lot of ways. And I think it's definitely worth a go. It's probably there is such a thing as damage done, and cerebral palsy, you have this sort of damaged area that's not going to come back completely. I would not think that would happen, but can something come back and a little bit happen? Yeah, potentially, and it's worth a shot anyway.
All right. John Albert, $1.99. Any tips for finding a carnivore-friendly doctor?
Ooh, yeah, difficult. There are usually lists of keto doctors, and most keto doctors are at least in the realm of carnivore, right? So what do you stop eating carbs? What do you eat, right? You have to eat protein and fat. Most of that's going to be derived from animal sources, right? Now they may have different funny ideas about why you really need spinach in your diet, but you can sort of take the good with the bad, and and just sort of do your own thing. But that's what I would do. Is I would do a web search for keto doctors, ketogenic doctors, or whatever that in your area. Functional medicine doctors usually more savvy with this sort of thing, but not always. So I would look for ketogenic doctors in your area. Low Carb Down Under in Australia. If you're in Australia, they have a website with different low carb carnivore doctors, keto doctors. That's what they call low carb doctors. Many of them are either carnivore themselves or at least carnivore adjacent and carnivore friendly. And so you can look up there. There's Low Carb USA, and there's other like Rivero Health and different sorts of things in the US. You can also find different lists of doctors in different areas. And so, yeah. So depending on where you are, just sort of Google around and look for keto doctors in your area. There's usually a list that someone's put together.
All right. Trey Coleman, super chat. Thanks. This next one is a multi-part. Let's see here. Victim of a serious crime, late middle-aged guy had a beautiful home and business stolen from me. Police can't help trying to stay off the street for 15 years. As a result, carbs calm me down. Carnivore lion ribeye give me clarity, uncontrollable rage. Probably useful in Paleolithic era, but now I had to stop. After a month to avoid being arrested, it was really bad, uncontrollable against all who hurt me, including police. Tried the diet twice, took electrolytes. I think there's one more here. Full blood test, all normal. Never have been violent in my life before. I wonder if successful carnivores haven't been crime victims with long-term effects. That's a big one.
Well, normally actually people get more chilled out on a carnivore diet. There's Carnivore Zen. That's actually one of the Facebook groups. I'm much more sort of level as well. But yeah, it can make your brain work better, and you can think about these things. You can get very pissed about these things. It's very understandable that you're furious in that situation. And when your brain's working, you're not being suppressed and sort of, I guess, mollified, but really, it's sort of depressing you down. This is why they used to give out, bread in circuses in Roman times, because it was specifically bread. They cut off the meat supply and they gave out bread, so no one could get meat. They only ate bread. It just make you docile. So, having those sorts of things making you docile, that could be what's going on. When you're healthy and your body's working, your brain's working, you can think about things, and you have some things to think about that are going to upset you. They're going to upset you. It can also increase your testosterone, and that can inspire you up as well. Most people get more chill. You have a good reason for being upset. And so I don't think that's a consequence of carnivore. I think carnivore is just making you healthy and making you, and making your body work better. And you have a lot of real issues and real understandable reasons to be extremely angry. Put that into a direction that might be helpful. I don't know the situation. I don't know if it's possible to pursue legal means at this point, or do anything from a legal standpoint, or do something else that's not going to get you in trouble. But if you try to direct that, doing carnivore, getting healthy, getting your brain workout, and being like, I'm really pissed, and then focusing that and directing that in something, even just focusing that and directing it in a new business to do this, be like, screw them. The best revenge is a good life. And so you go back and you build back even bigger and stronger and better, and be like, look what you lost out on, dickhead. We could have been partners with this. We could have been, you could have been a part of this, but no, you're not. You're screwed. And now you buy them out and stomp them out and, destroy them in some sort of business venture. I don't know. It's maybe a pipe dream, maybe, sort of just wishful thinking, but people have done it. People have done things like that. But either way, doing something productive for you to get your life back and to live a good life is always going to be better. Again, even if you never encounter these people again, if you are doing well and you're back being successful, that's going to piss them off more than anything else will.
All right, from Martin. Thanks for what you're doing. Would appreciate answering my previous question about folic acid and vitamin C insufficiency. I just looked back. I couldn't find that question, but I think it's just generally about folic acid and vitamin C insufficiency.
Okay. So look, some people aren't able to get enough folic acid just from muscle meat, in grain finished beef, right? Regeneratively raised beef probably just fine, especially eggs. Regeneratively raised eggs. There's one guy talking about his eggs had like 25 times the amount of folate as normal eggs that you get out. Eggs, egg yolks, things like that have more folate. Liver has more folate. So if you need a bit more folic acid, then, just eat more egg yolks. Hopefully, get them regeneratively raised, pasture raised, sort of things. They're eating just bugs and lizards and things like that. They're going to be healthier. They're going to have better folate. And you're just having a bit of liver. So sometimes we'll do that. So vitamin C insufficiency, I mean, you don't need as much vitamin C, on a carnivore diet. You just simply don't, because you're making collagen from, pre-built building blocks, right? And so, you need vitamin C to stave off scurvy because it hydrolyzes proline and lysine, which makes tightly bound collagen, right? You're getting those things already hydrolyzed when you're eating meat that has collagen, that has these hydrolyzed amino acids. And so you don't need as much vitamin C. So I don't know if you had vitamin C tested on a lab, but if you don't have any symptoms, you don't have any problems, it's not really an issue. There's more vitamin C in liver as well, especially sort of less cooked liver. That's going to sort of preserve a bit more of that. So if you're worried about that, just have a bit more liver. That'll cover your folate and your vitamin C, but you really don't need vitamin C for scurvy anyway on this. There are other things that we use vitamin C for. It's not the antioxidant that you need. That's urea. We actually stopped making vitamin C a long time ago. You don't stop doing something. You don't actually lose a genetic trait, unless there's a survival advantage to lose it. So us and I think guinea pigs have lost the ability to make vitamin C. So there's obviously something to that. So it's theorized that when we started eating a lot more meat, became more carnivorous, we started getting much more urea. That took care of the demands that we needed for oxidative stress and things like that. And then now we're having too much vitamin C and more than we needed, and that actually can metabolize into oxalates. And so maybe we're getting oxalate problems. So the people who are making less and less vitamin C didn't get all the kidney damage and oxalate poisoning and things like that. So potentially that's one of them. But whatever reason, we stopped making vitamin C because we got everything we needed from meat. So if you think you need a bit more, have a bit of liver, that'll take care of the folate as well.
All right. Question: does carnivore cure gum disease?
It can, yeah. So it depends on the cause of all these things, but yeah, I know a number of people have cured that. There's Dr. Kevin Stock, who's a dentist, and he talks about this a lot. He does carnivore, and he promotes a carnivore diet for people on the internet and his patients as well. Jordan Peterson cured his gum disease on a carnivore diet. The secretary at my medical practice actually just cured her gum disease, and she always had this as something that you're not supposed to be able to cure. And her dentist was like, "How the hell did you do this? You've had this for years and years and years. This doesn't just go away. Like, what the hell happened?" So yeah, it absolutely can. Yeah, it depends on what's causing it, but for a lot of people, they've been fixing their gum disease and significantly improving their oral health.
Will carnivore diet help an extreme case of Lyme's, inflammation, even in the voice box? Any studies or data to research this? Thank you. God bless. You are a godsend.
No, I don't know of any studies. There's a lot of there is research and publications like going back into the 1800s with Dr. J.H. Salisbury, who made the Salisbury steak and really pushed a red meat and water diet for a lot of these people. And then subsequently people came after that, and some of that was with Lyme disease. But I certainly don't know of any specifically with the voice box, but I've seen a number of people. A lot of people do come to carnivore with having issues with Lyme disease. It's one of those nasty ones that take a long time, and it's like autoimmune issues that can really be stubborn if you're not very, very on top of it and very strict. And so what Salisbury found is that you really need just red meat and water, and that beef was much better than lamb. So that's sort of what they found. So, and I've certainly found that certainly red meat is much, much, much better for these cases. So that's what I would do. And I would just eat, like literally only eat red meat and water, not even using spices or seasoning sauces or not drinking coffee, anything like that. I just eat, beef. I would only eat water. I don't even really salt anymore. So just meat and water. And that's what I would do for that. It's going to take time. It's going to take months. It's going to take many months potentially. Hopefully it gets better. But yeah, it's just people's description of their improvement. But a lot of people are improving, so hopefully yours does too.
All right, Christy says, I've been on carnivore for 8 weeks now and starting to experience severe stomach problems. Drink a gallon of water a day with lemon juice twice daily. Help.
Well, it depends on what's causing your stomach problems. So I wouldn't really expect lemon juice to help necessarily. You're going to get things that you don't necessarily want, like all citrus has fructose, which make you light sensitive, and so UV light reacts with that and can make you have problems otherwise. And you can also, your liver has to detox these things and so on. Those can cause problems, but a bit of lemon juice, probably not the end of the world, but it's, I don't know why it would help your stomach problems. I don't know what your stomach problems are, unfortunately. So that really does sort of matter. What I would do is I would, do like a food diary, food and symptom diary, where you just write down exactly what you're eating, exactly when you're eating, how much you're eating it. And then when these sort of symptoms come on, if you're getting this just directly after, your stomach, you could have other sorts of things, and that might be something you need to speak to your doctor about. Maybe you had developed an ulcer or something like that. You had pain. You're not going to develop an ulcer from a carnivore diet. It would be something else added on to that, but there are other things that can cause ulcers. And so, it really just depends on what are causing your stomach problems. So severe stomach problem, that sounds like probably severe stomach pain. If a bit of lemon juice helps, great, but I would try the diary, check your symptoms, check when they're happening, and in relation to food and things like that. So mark down when you're eating, mark down when you're having the symptoms, and be as precise and give as much details as possible. And you could try having a bit of lemon juice. I don't know what's causing I don't know what your stomach issues are. I don't know what's causing them. So I don't know if that would help. I doubt it will. I don't think it's going to help anything in particular, but you at least have some information. You can see, okay, maybe this isn't actually even associated with the food I'm eating, or maybe it's only associated with the certain things that I'm eating, and you can just sort of eliminate those things. Or it gives you just a piece of information and some documented objective symptoms that you can then go take to your doctor and say, hey, something weird's happening. Seems to be a bit of a weird pattern here. Can we check this out? And they might order, some investigations like a scope, and to see if you have gastritis or something else that might need some help with. So that's what I would do.
All right. Colors said mainly carnivore, but I do eat grapes and honey for my sweet tooth once per day. Is it natural if my main goal is weight loss and muscle gain?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a lot better than a lot of other things, but the honey and the grapes, these are sugar, that's going to raise your blood sugar. It's going to raise your insulin. That's going to stall weight loss, or certainly not going to help your weight loss. It depends on how much you're eating, of course, but anything addictive, a little bit of something addictive easily and quickly turns into a lot of something addictive. And so that's just something that you don't want to, I just don't think it's worth playing with, honestly. And I don't think it's doing anything for you. And that's why we're doing this thing, because it's a sweet tooth, right? And so it's an addiction, but like any addiction, it can go away. And like any addiction, you should probably get rid of it, right? It's not really helping you being addicted to something like that. And sort of eating things compulsively because you really, really want to, right? So, you should try to get rid of that if you can, and at least reduce that as well. But, after about 2 weeks, generally these cravings go away, and you don't really miss it. If you are having cravings, just eat a lot more meat. If you start going like, oh, I really want that honey, I really want that, eat a steak, eat some meat, fill yourself up with fatty meat. People tend to have very little cravings and sugar cravings and things like that after that. So just give that a shot, and hopefully you can come off it, because I do think that you would be better off without fruit and honey. Yeah.
All right, Steve, 61-year-old male, strict carnivore, no dairy for 8 weeks, down 30 pounds, 5'11", 148 pounds now. I have yet to have a solid stool. When will that
change? Yeah, look, so I did a video called, you don't need fiber, and in parentheses of fiber, constipation, and diet. I'm still playing around with these names to see what helps the algorithm more or less, but that's what it's called right now. It might be called something else later, but it goes into sort of the main reasons, or the most common reasons why you might experience either constipation or diarrhea. Most commonly, it's that people are still drinking coffee, and when you get rid of fiber, this laxative is now going to be much more powerful, because you don't have this big blockages to just sort of move through, like a bunch of semi trucks and traffic. Right now, it's just there's open highways. Things are going to just be flooding through there. So, if you're drinking coffee, you're drinking tea, or you're using artificial sweeteners, usually in the coffee or tea, get rid of them. They're all laxatives. You don't need them. You don't want them, and they will give you loose stools. If you're not doing any of that, if you're exclusively eating meat and you're exclusively drinking water, it's most often because you're eating a lot more fat than your body can absorb. So there's that overflow valve. Our body can only absorb a certain amount of fat at a time. We run out of bile. We can only absorb very little after that. And so the rest of that goes out. And so if you're eating a lot more fat than your body can absorb, well, then that means it's going to come out, in liquid fashion. So if that's the case, you can sort of just pull back a bit and see how you do. The other side is you could be so constipated because you're not eating nearly enough fat. And that's usually what happens when people aren't eating enough fat. They can get quite constipated and sort of blocked up, and actually liquid stools sort of squirt around that. So you actually get liquid stools, and then every now and then you get a big, hard, chunky very difficult to pass stool, and that's called overflow diarrhea or spurious diarrhea. And that means you need to eat a lot more fat and sort of clear that stuff out. And and then there's a few people that have done all those sorts of things and they still are just having loose stools. And for them, they just need to get it. For some reason, people have problems with like rendered fat, like, like butter and tallow and things like that. It just goes through their body too quick. Their body doesn't have a chance to absorb it. So they need to eat more of the whole fat, like the tissue fat. So the fat in the cellular structure of the fat on the meat itself, as opposed to like rendered out liquid fat that's come out from cooking. They do better with that. And then about 3 people now, even that wasn't enough. And then they started cutting off the fat when it was raw before they cooked it. And they would eat the fat uncooked, and then they would cook up the rest of the meat. And that did it. So, there's a lot of different options in there. 95% of the time, it's either coffee, tea, artificial sweeteners, or you're eating too much fat.
All right. Holistic Love. Hey, Dr. Chaffee, if you suffer from candida, is carnivore a good way to go? Thank you.
Yeah, it can be, because the thing is you're going to optimize your body's biome as well. So your oral biome, your microbiome in your gut, and there are various sorts of flora around your body. It can certainly improve that. Sometimes you need a bit of help. Sometimes you need an antifungal or something like that, depending on where it is and how bad it is. So, I'm still, a doctor. I still think that medicines are useful in certain select circumstances. If your body is having trouble clearing something or needs a bit of help. So, yes, going carnivore can help your immune system. It can help clear infections. It can help optimize your body's flora, in your mouth, in your digestion tract, and elsewhere. And so that can definitely help that. But if you still need medicine on top of that, there is medicine available.
All right. Thank you, Zita. And then we have the Carnivore Boss. Question: best response to friends who either have fibromyalgia or have children on the autism spectrum when they insist that these are neurological disorders unaffected by dietary changes?
Oh, well, you can just point them in the way of Dr. Chris Palmer, Professor Chris Palmer from Harvard, who has actually shown, no, that's not the case. So yes, these are neurological disorders that have a strong dietary component, at least for autism. And he's reversing people with schizophrenia. He's curing people with schizophrenia through diet, right? And so, that's not supposed to happen. He has a better success rate than the standard of care, medicine and counseling and things like that, right? So what's happening here? Well, he writes a whole book about why that is. It has to do with mitochondria. Mitochondria aren't working properly. In autism, you have mitochondria that aren't working properly. You don't get neurons developing properly, and you get autism. That's actually been shown by Texas A&M to be absolutely diet related. There's a number of studies that show a strong relationship between diet and autism. There's a study showing that women who ate more red meat pre-conception had and red meat products had lower rates of kids with autism than women who ate more saturated fat during pregnancy and had higher LDL cholesterol, that dreaded LDL cholesterol, had lower rates of kids with autism. That women who breastfed their kids, lower rates of autism versus bottle fed, right? Bottle fed formula, they didn't differentiate between people who expressed and collected their breast milk or used formula, but the vast majority of people who use bottles use formula and juices and all that sort of garbage. And so strong relationship between nutrition and autism. Certainly Texas A&M actually showed causation between or causative relationship between diet and autism, in that they showed that vegans and vegetarians have a much higher rates of kids with autism. Okay. So why the hell is that? Well, they found that they say, well, carnitine is supposedly a non-essential amino acid that, we make this, we don't need it from our diet. Well, first of all, we actually benefit from having more of it. First of all, second of all, only 70% of people make it. 30% of people don't make it at all or don't make enough of it, right? So they need it from their diet. It is essential to them. And so if you're one of these kids that that needs more carnitine from your diet, and your parents are really depriving you and starving you of essential nutrients, you're not going to get these essential nutrients. You're not going to be able to develop your brain properly, because carnitine is integral for mitochondrial health and for neuronal development. And so if you don't have enough carnitine, or you don't have any carnitine, your brain will not function properly. It will not develop properly. It will not function properly. And the fact of the matter is that, I mean, there's studies actually called, ketogenic diet as a treatment modality for autism. So that's in the published literature. People are already treating people with autism with a ketogenic diet. Carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet. So yes, well, of course, this is related to dietary changes. Fibromyalgia, what the hell is fibromyalgia? Ask them to explain what that is. Is it a neurological disorder? Is it? No one knows what fibromyalgia is. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. You have all these other sorts of things, and you just say, okay, we have no idea what it is. Fibromyalgia. Most doctors think that this is people making it up. Most people think it's drug-seeking behavior, or it's just in their head, right? And I don't, because I've seen people recover very well. They've gone on a carnivore diet, and I've had people tell me. I have an episode on YouTube called "Chronic Pain, Fibromyalgia," all that sort of stuff, right? You look it up with fibromyalgia and pain and all that sort of stuff. You'll see it, and look at the comments. And you'll see hundreds and hundreds of comments from different people who had fibromyalgia, or radiculopathy, and nerve pain, sciatica, and all these sorts of things. They went on a carnivore diet, and many of these people are saying they've been long-term sufferers. One guy said that that 1 month on carnivore, it was the first time in 12 years that he didn't take opiates for his fibromyalgia and sciatica. Right. And he's like, thank God I can come off these things, because he hated it for all that time. Talking about restricting and limiting yourself, that's restricting and limiting, being so caught up with pain and being doped up and drugged up that you can't function properly for 12 years of his life. That's horrible. It's all of it. Your life is related to diet. Everything's related to diet. Getting your arm chopped off, probably not related to diet. Everything else, diet.
Fibromyalgia, that sounds like IBS. That's what I think of when I hear IBS, because I was diagnosed with that. It's like, well, we don't know what's wrong with you. You've got IBS. It's just eating the standard American diet.
Yeah, it's eating crap.
Yeah. Please help me understand the relation between the pH in the stomach, the pH in the blood, and the relation to being able to become full carnivore.
Well, I mean, pH in your stomach and pH in your blood are just two completely separate systems. So the pH in your blood needs to sort of be at a very specific level between 7.35 and 7.45. It goes outside of that very narrow range, and you get very, very sick. And so, that's the optimal pH for your body to run properly. So there's a lot of reasons why that is, but the pH in your stomach is a little different, because you need it to be very acidic to kill off the bacteria, because normally we would be eating things that have a high bacteria load, because refrigerators are very recent, and commercialized beef is very recent as well. And so normally we were hunting, and we had to sort of eat things over several days, and they'd have a high bacterial load, or maybe we're scavenging and do all that sort of stuff. So our stomach pH had to be very, very low, very acidic. It's in that range of carnivores, and even like scavenger carnivores that are just eating like carrion and things like that, like vultures and other sorts of scavengers as well. So that just needs to be very low. Way to optimize that: eat what you're supposed to eat. Don't take medications that would disrupt that, and don't drink a lot of water before you eat. Then you'll keep your stomach acid nice and concentrated the way it's supposed to be, and you'll just you'll do very well in your digestion as well. And so, being carnivore, just don't drink water for like an hour before you're going to eat, and try not to drink water as you're eating. So an hour before, hour after, you're going to, keep your stomach acid, pretty concentrated. Some people say actually 2 hours, like Salisbury would say 2 hours before or after you don't want to eat. You don't want to drink water. You keep it very, very concentrated, and that helps with digestion. So that's it. But yeah, if you're taking a whole bunch of medications that's going to mess with your stomach pH, like a whole bunch of, like antacids and things like that, your body can sort of keep pushing out, acids. Okay, hey, no, we need more of this, we need more of this, we need more of this. That can actually give you like a metabolic alkalosis. So your blood pH goes too high. You can do different things that screw with your body. Don't, just eat what you're supposed to eat, and let your body get on with it. Don't take a bunch of medications and try to, you don't try to micromanage your millions of years of evolution or God's design or whatever you want to think about. Either way, we're designed to do a certain thing. You're not going to figure that out better than your body already has. So just let your body do its thing. You'll be fine.
Tony J, thank you. $2. Zeta, 2 months on carnivore diet, beef, butter, bacon, eggs, but I'm gaining weight. Clothes have gotten tighter. I also have more cellulite.
Okay. Well, okay. So if you're eating anything else, so sometimes people will still be eating artificial sweeteners. That's a major one that people gain on, and they say, no, I'm just eating carnivore, this, that, and the other. Okay, what exactly you're eating, anything else, and it'll come out that they're having like monk fruit sugar or stevia, or they're having, different sorts of, electrolytes or whatever with stevia in it, or other sorts of things, or dairy. Dairy is a major one that people can stall on or gain weight on. It's very rare that someone is just eating meat and only drinking water and actually putting on fat. It does happen. Kelly Hogan was one of those people. She put on weight. You can also put on weight that's healthy, like you can put on muscle and bone density and then not really lose much fat, and you can put on weight on the scale. Some people have difficulty losing fat early on, or even middle distance, just due to hormonal disruption, like rampant leptin resistance. So you're having chronically high insulin that's blocking your leptin. You're eating a bunch of lectins that can block leptin as well, and you become leptin resistant because your leptin is massively elevated, and your body's just screaming out, stop eating, stop eating, stop eating, and you can't actually see it because you're leptin resistant. So that can be an issue. I've seen some people with massively elevated leptins, like well over 100, that some of them will lose some weight, but most of them it's more slow. Some of them don't really lose any weight, but they gain health. They feel better. They're coming off medications. They're putting their autoimmune issues into remission. And that's what's important. So you need to focus on health. You need to get rid of anything that's not meat and water, anything, right? And then focus on your health, focus on how you're feeling, and then give your body time, right? If you're doing beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, maybe just cut that down to beef. Most people will do great on beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Some people need to be just on beef and water, nothing else at all, not even seasonings or spices, certainly no sweeteners, and no dairy. Just try that. And if you're, one of the people that are just in that situation like Kelly Hogan was, first of all, watch Kelly Hogan, see that. I have an interview with her. We talk about that. And that can be quite helpful, because like, okay, I'm not the only one that's experienced this. It is rare, and I hope it's not the case that, that's not the case. But if it is, it's okay. It happens. It just takes time. It just takes time for your body to heal. You're going to have a lot of hormonal issues. You're going to have leptin, which is very important for a lot of other hormones, getting your insulin down, getting your insulin resistance and sensitivity back to normal, and a lot of other things. You have a lot of other hormones that are going to be in play, thyroid, estrogen, so on. These will take time to normalize. When they get into better levels, you'll start seeing more fat loss, which is not the same as weight loss, because you can put on muscle and you can lose fat and you stay the same weight. And so focus on your health, give it time, just beef and water, see how you go. In time, it should get better. Those people with those high leptins, that leptin does come down, and eventually that will come down to a more normal level. And that's when you start seeing the fat loss really take off. It will happen. Just be patient and just really focus on your health and how you feel, because that's the main thing.
Yeah. I did that same thing 46 days ago, switched to just beef and water from BBBE. I feel so much better. The weight started coming off. I was just steady for a while, but I'm on Lion Diet, just beef, salt, and water for life now. I feel way better. It's a lot easier
Nice.
too. And yeah, the weight just keeps coming off. Trey Coleman, $5. 21-year-old male here, been carnivore for about a month. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism when I was 9 years old. Any way carnivore can reverse hypothyroidism?
Well, it depends on the cause of hypothyroidism, but yeah, I see people improve their thyroid issues all the time, and there's people like Hashimoto's can be a cause of hypothyroidism, and that can improve. That takes longer. Any autoimmune issue, you have to be very strict. Just beef and water, really, nothing else. You have to be very, very on it, and you'll improve mostly from that anyway. You'll get most improvement from that as well. And yeah, it can get better. If you have something that's damaged your thyroid and it's permanently damaged, it may not come back. There is such thing as damage done, and it could be permanent. But yes, there are a lot of people improve their thyroid dramatically. Just give your body as much as it needs, and see what happens. And you will improve in many, many, many other ways anyway. And yeah, you could absolutely improve your thyroid.
All right, Carnivore in Christ. Could carnivore diet shrink uterine fibroids? Uterine.
Yeah, uterine fibroids. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So a lot of uterine fibroids are actually caused by insulin resistance, or having kind of chronically high blood sugar, blood glucose, and high insulin can actually trigger the growth of uterine fibroids. And so that's something that ketogenic diets have already been shown to do. You can actually shrink those down. Yeah. So and a carnivore diet is a type of ketogenic diet, or it should be, right? So if you're doing fruit and honey, all that sort of stuff, that's not ketogenic. You need to be ketogenic, especially for this one. So doing a carnivore diet, no carbs and sugar. What I consider a carnivore diet is just meat and water, right? So people say, oh, I do carnivore and I have, lamb, I have lamb and honey and fruit and sugar and, daffodils and whatever the hell they eat. Like okay, that's not exactly what we're talking here. So, if you're saying carnivore, you should just mean just meat, just water. You can say, I do meat based and I do the X, Y, and Z that's not meat. It makes it much more clear for everybody. But carnivore just means meat, just means water. And that makes it easier. So if you're just eating meat, only drinking water, yes, that should help.
All right. We're almost to the bottom. This is turning into like a telethon. This is awesome. They keep adding more on here. You're still good for a couple more?
Sure.
Okay. The Complaining Channel, $5. A quick follow-up. Thanks. Legal, not possible. Maybe I'll try Lion Diet and write a book, What Happened to Me, to try to keep distracted. And then one more from
There you go.
This is going to be tough. Can it reduce and cure angiokeratoma of Fortici?
I don't know. I don't actually know what that is. So, there's a lot of things that we're just sort of just seeing and just saying, hey, I've seen that. I've seen enough Crohn's, patients go put into remission that I can confidently say now this will help people with Crohn's. And there's sort of adjacent studies like the one with Elemental Diet and just removing carbs and fiber that put people in remission and without medications, right? So those I can speak more confidently on. Other things we're just sort of seeing, anecdotally, and that one I haven't even heard of before. So unfortunately, I don't know. But again, like anything else, it's going to allow your body to work properly, and so many things are related to eating the wrong thing. And so it's just more and more and more things I'm just seeing people are coming up and like, wow, it's helping this, it's helping vitiligo. That was a surprise to me. People had, bleached skin, the supposedly Michael Jackson disease, where sort of was just getting, losing all the melanin, things like that. Not only did it stop progressing, the melanin came back and the pigmentation came back. So I was like, that's amazing. So you're just seeing these things, and it's impressive. And you try to sort of relay that to other people that may be experiencing the same thing. And then it's just worth a shot. There's no guarantees on things like that we don't have like good studies for or anything like that, or even know what the hell they are. But, it's always worth a shot, and just to see what happens. And again, you're going to improve on a lot, in a lot of other ways And that, so, even if it doesn't help that, it's going to make your life a lot better in any case.
Yeah. Joe Rogan's back on carnivore and he has Vitalago and it's helped him tremendously.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
Edison Twain, how many liters of oral electrolytes do you need to consume per day? I take this one called Electrolyte that they sell here in Mexico.
Oh, if you're just doing carnivore, just doing meat and water, I don't think you need to take that. Some people do, especially early on when their insulin is normalized. And once your insulin gets to a normal, stable, low level, and your body's sort of adjusted to that, you usually don't need to do that. If you're sort of feeling symptomatic and weird and whatever, and you feel that those electrolytes are helpful, go for it. But most people don't need them. I mean, most people don't even need salt. Like I don't even salt anymore. I'm perfectly fine. I still sweat. I still work out. I still have tons of energy. I don't get cramps. All these sorts of things. So I don't think you need to do that. But if you're going to take any electrolyte, then you need to make sure that it's not anything that has any sweeteners or flavorings. That's really important. That stuff is really not good for you. So tastes like crap, whatever. If you want to take it, then take the unsweetened, unflavored version. That stevia, oh, it's natural. Okay, arsenic's natural. Sugar's natural. Stevia comes from a plant. It's natural. It's natural from a plant. Sugar's natural from a plant. That's what we're specifically trying to avoid here by using stevia. So that's not justification. So just use. If you're going to use electrolytes, I don't think most people need to use them. Some people may, but if you're going to use them, just get them without sweeteners or flavorings.
I thought doing lion, I was at the most extreme I could be. Now I have to start considering the salt thing some more because I'm still doing salt. Josh, $24. Thank you so much. Michelle, Dr. Chaffee, what do you think about sugar-free, no-cal, carb-G fuel? It has caffeine. Thank you.
So I mean that's going to be, I don't know what G Fuel is, but it sounds like something you get in a can. If it is, and it's going to have, you look at the ingredients list, it's going to have 30 different things that you don't recognize, and artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are awful. They are awful. You don't want to do that. There's a study. I mean, there's a lot of things that are coming out, like aspartame. WHO has just classified as a carcinogen. They've also classified processed meat as a carcinogen. So God the hell, who the hell knows? But this is something I've heard since I was a kid in the 80s, that aspartame was likely carcinogenic, and there were sort of studies that suggested that. But there's a lot of industry money going into research. Oh, no, it definitely didn't. Well, there were decades of industry funded research saying that cigarettes didn't cause cancer either. And they damn well knew that it did. And that came out. So anything like that, I wouldn't do. So I think it's as important what not to eat or drink as it is what to eat. You need to eat meat, fatty meat, because that's what gives you, your life, right? But all the other things can cause harm. So they're just as important to not eat those things, right? So my hard rule is no plants or fungus, no sugar or any sweeteners, nothing artificial. So that is probably all three, and so I would avoid it for sure. If you want some caffeine, even though it's a neurotoxin, even though it was developed as an insecticide to fry the brains of insects trying to eat that plant, I would just take it as a pill, right? Because you want the caffeine to wake you up. Do you want all the thousands of other chemicals that are in tea and coffee, or the God knows what the hell else is in that G Fuel stuff? No, you don't. So you just want the caffeine. You can take some caffeine. It's $8 for a bottle on Amazon. It'll last you a year, and it costs what a Starbucks or one of those goat fuels will cost you. So I wouldn't drink that crap. And any sort of artificial sweetener, you really want to get rid of. Those things they're highly addictive, and they're very, very bad for you. I would stay far away from those.
All right. Tony asked, hi, why did Dr. Chaffee stop carnivore when younger?
Oh, just because I didn't know, I wasn't doing carnivore per se. I was just avoiding plants. And so I learned how toxic plants were. I was learning how, in botany, biology, and cancer biology, just how toxic plants were. And I had a professor of cancer biology at University of Washington in Seattle, who I wish I could track down. But I don't remember his name. It's 23 years ago at this point. And I tried actually looking through the records at UW online, but I couldn't find it, unfortunately. But he just showed us how toxic these things were, how many dozens or even over 100 carcinogens that were in just vegetables that you'd eat on a daily basis. And he we were all just blown away and shocked. And we were just like, oh, but how can that be? And he just looked at us and just said, look, I don't eat salad. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you, right? So he's like, get it through your heads. This is how plants defend themselves. It's kill or be killed in the wild for plants as well as animals. And so they will defend themselves with lethal force if necessary, right? And so they do. And so at that point, I just said, right, screw it. I'm not eating any plants. I just defaulted into eating eggs and meat because there wasn't anything left. I went to the store. I'm like, what the hell do I eat? Because everything has plants in it. And you go to the store now and you look around. You look at it as a percentage, like what the hell here does not have plants in it? It's just the meat and dairy aisle. That's it. And so, in dairy aisle, I have a bunch of, soy crap and things like that in there now, infiltrated it like a cancer, but that was it. And so I just started eating just meat and eggs, and that was it. And I never felt better, never performed better athletically until, now, but I don't have the time to train 8 hours a day now. And, and I just felt absolutely amazing. But then I was in England and I was playing rugby over there, and I just didn't have the same access to meat. Some of it was breaded, and I was just like, okay, well, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Dose makes the poison. Maybe just having some crumbing on the chicken is not that big. And it wasn't even all that often. It wasn't like every day. It was like every couple of days or something like that. It was enough. It was enough to knock me off my game. And I remember thinking, I was like, why am I not feeling as just superhuman amazing as I normally do? Like, what's going on? I'm not pushing myself. I'm not working as hard. Like, am I just 25 now? Am I just old? I'm just over the hill and just dying now? And I just didn't know what it was. I figured I was just getting old. And, but that's when I started slipping off of that without realizing it, because, I made that concession of like, oh, well, maybe it's not that big of a deal. And then a little bit, something else wasn't that big of a deal, and a little bit more. And all of a sudden I started seeing things materialize. I just didn't look at bread or ketchup or anything like that as food ever, because it wasn't food to me, so I just didn't see it. I just didn't register. Now, all of a sudden, you open the fridge up and there's like 90 bottles of ketchup because these are English rugby players. They put ketchup on everything. And so they just call it sauce. Pass the sauce. There's only one sauce. What kind of sauce? No, it's just the one. It's just ketchup, right? And so there's just all of a sudden, it was just like, Jesus Christ, it's a lot of ketchup. I'm like, oh, I haven't used ketchup in a while. Oh, I guess I'll use that. Just completely blanking on the fact that, like, of course I haven't eaten this stuff in 5 years because I was specifically not eating anything with plants in it. And then that mindset of just like, I'm not going to eat anything that has plants in it, just all of a sudden just disappeared. It was crazy how quickly it went away because I wasn't doing carnivore. It wasn't until later I realized, holy shit, no, humans are carnivores. That's the kind of animal we are. We were taught that in elementary school. We were apex predators. Apex predators are by definition carnivores because they eat animals down the food chain. That's what an apex predator is, and that's what we are. And so I was like, holy shit, okay, that's it. And that's what I was doing. I was living as a carnivore. I was doing that, and I came back to it. But that was it. It's so easy to slip off if you don't consciously know what you're doing. And so even though I made it 5 years, and those were literally the 5 best years of my life, as far as athleticism and how I felt physically, it's you just sort of, you don't realize just one little chink in the armor and it all sort of slips away. But now I'm consciously doing this. I know exactly what I'm doing. So not really in danger of that. But I really wish I was doing this the whole time. I'm actually really pissed that I slipped off of it all. I should have been doing this my whole life. My parents should have known about this. They should have taught me this instead of me teaching them. But, I'm glad I got to anyway, and I can teach my kids. But I really wish I'd been doing this the whole time for 20 years. I would have been just a different person, just a different human being.
Right.
Feeling a lot better for more time.
It's so sad thinking about the current generation of children are never going
Mm,
to know what it's like to just be a natural human being, what it's like to feel healthy. Hopefully,
yeah.
unless we can get the word out and change it. Josh says, I've got a
Hopefully.
metal aorta valve and aortic root put in 10 years ago. I've been carnivore 8 months. Scared the cholesterol will hang around the scar tissue from the surgery. Should I be worried? I know this is not personal advice.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not a cardiothoracic surgeon, but I don't think that cholesterol has anything to do with any sort of deposition or deposits around the valves. The main thing with a metal aortic valve is you need to be on blood thinners, and that's not going to change on a carnivore diet. Like you have a piece of metal in your body that's going to cause clots if you don't take your blood thinners for that. But no, I don't think it should cause anything else. The cholesterol that you'll get is healthy cholesterol that your body is choosing to make because it needs it. It deems it necessary to make, right? You're not just going to get excess cholesterol that your body doesn't know about and doesn't want to use. So no, I think you'll be fine from that standpoint. I don't know of anything to do with aortic valve replacements that would be an issue anyway.
All right, we got a little two-parter here. Carnivore for 5 months coming from keto. I was on mostly optimal weight, just looking to drop a bit of percentage body fat, but gained instead also thyroid issues. And then speaking with a functional doctor, he noted my insulin is stuck on very low. Body can go on reserve mode and gain fat. My insulin 2 thoughts.
Well, your insulin 2 is great. That's fantastic. Body can go on reserve mode and gain fat. Yeah. The thing is too, is if you undereat, you can also gain fat, right? And that's something people think, oh, you want to eat less and then you'll lose fat, or eat less fat and you'll lose fat. In fact, they can actually go the other way. So, I mean, bariatric surgeons, even tell this or have their nutritionists say to people once they get this surgery, hey, you need to eat enough. Because if you eat sort of less than a certain amount, like 1,200 kilocalories for women, that you'll actually put on weight. You won't lose weight. So what is that? What does that mean? Well, you're changing yourself hormonally, but you're suppressing your immune system. So you suppress not your immune system, but you suppress your metabolism. You also suppress your immune system if you're eating crap, but you suppress your metabolism if you're under eating, right? And so if you're under eating, you're telling your body that you have a lack of resources, because you're not able to get enough food to maintain life at a certain level and a metabolism up here. So he said, okay, can't do it. We'll bring it down here. This is like, if you get your hours cut at work and you don't go on a shopping spree, you start cutting costs, trimming sales, and you get through it, right? You start spending yourself into debt and you're screwed, right? So your body's smarter than that. It's not going to do that. And so it's going to actually start lowering your expenditures, right? So that's lowering your metabolism. It's lowering your energy output. Okay. And, and your body can say, okay, we need to store this stuff. We need to store this stuff. Right. So it's going to do that. So you need to eat enough, but you need to eat enough meat, right? And so eat enough meat, eat enough fat. Your insulin being low, it's supposed to be low. You want it to be low. That's low for someone who's on a standard diet. Like, my God, what is that? That's where it's supposed to be. Having it around there is perfectly fine. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. As I said, there are some people that can gain weight. Generally, it is a hormonal issue. So thyroid, leptin, estrogen, all these other sorts of things can play a role. When you have excess body tissue, body fat, it's actually metabolically active. It can actually produce estrogen. And so that can play a role in weight loss as well. So, you need to just let your body heal. You need to give your body time and chance. You need to give it enough. You need to give your body enough fatty meat and eat until fatty meat stops tasting good. Only eat meat, only drink water, give yourself enough of it and give yourself time. Your body it's going to take a long time to heal your hormones, like I've said before, there's no shortcut. There are no shortcuts, right? You walk 10 miles into the woods, you're going to have to walk 10 miles out, right? So you're going to have to give your body time. It's not going to take 40 years or however long it took you to get to where you are now, but it is going to take time. So your hormones are going to need to heal. They're going to need to normalize. And once those get into a normal range, then you'll start seeing fat loss.
All right. Peter Kovacs, thank you. Awesome. Looks like we just got a couple more here. Jeremy M, is it normal to struggle eating bacon?
Yeah, if you're not hungry, right? So if bacon doesn't taste good, if a steak doesn't taste good, it means you're not hungry, right? And so, if other meats are tasting good and you just really don't like bacon, okay, maybe there's just something about it that you don't like. But in general, if fatty meat doesn't taste good, then that's just your body telling you that you don't need to eat, that you're not hungry anymore. So just listen to it. If you aren't enjoying fatty meat, you don't have to eat for the sake of eating. In fact, your body is telling you to stop eating and just go and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. The next one was from Mockingbird. Acid reflux due to mechanical issue of the valve not closing properly. Any advice or do's and don'ts on carnivore diet?
Acid reflux due to a mechanical issue. Okay, so well, carnivore is not necessarily going to affect that. But what carnivore can do is it has been known to reduce reflux symptoms and can improve the acidity of your stomach, so you're not getting overly acidic stomach acid and causing problems that way. It just depends. It just depends on the anatomical issue that you have, and whether or not that's going to help with a carnivore diet. Quite often, what we're eating has a big role to play in the carnivore diet. But I don't know, because I don't know exactly what your anatomical disruption is. Sometimes people have neurological issues. We don't go through normal peristalsis or these or the other sort of things. Those things could potentially heal, but it just depends on the individual again. So it's not necessarily any do's and don'ts apart from just avoid spices and carbs and just anything. Just eat meat, just drink water, and and then you can also do a diary, so you can see how much you're eating. So if you're eating a lot, does that cause a problem? If you're not eating all that much, does that cause a problem, or is that better? So track what you're eating, track what your symptoms are, see how they line up, see if there's anything that you can adjust and manage to improve it. And that's actually a lot more helpful than people give credit for. So if people are having little problems like that, keeping track of it and monitoring it with like sort of a calendar. At this time I did this, then I had these symptoms, all these sorts of things. You can start seeing patterns, or you can just look like it's completely unrelated. Just get on with it.
All right, Mama Bear, 17-year-old son, partial agenesis, corpus callosum, epilepsy, severe cognitive delay, been high-fat, 98% carnivore for 3 years. Any chance the corpus callosum will develop more?
No, I don't think so, unfortunately. He might improve symptomatically in some ways, but no, I don't think that those major structures are necessarily going to regrow. At 17, your brain is still growing. Your brain is always remodeling and can improve at any age. But at 17, it's really done the majority of its development. Unfortunately, most of that's done in utero for those sorts of things, with like corpus callosum as well. However, epilepsy, yes, that can certainly help, and at least raise the threshold and sometimes make it so he's not having breakthrough seizures on medications, or maybe doesn't require as many medications. And the longer he goes without seizures, the less likely he is to have more seizures, which is very good. So I'm very sorry about that. That's a very difficult situation. I do think it would still help in a lot of ways, just making him healthier overall. I don't think it's going to regrow his corpus callosum, though, unfortunately. But it could help him in other ways. And I think it could help the epilepsy, and, could help, him be a bit, develop a bit better from here forward. Unfortunately, it can't undo everything, though, unfortunately, but I do think it will still make him better, better than he would be otherwise. The thing is, eating a lot of carbohydrates and things like that, and not letting his brain run on ketones, it's going to curtail, his brain function. So wherever his brain function is at, it's going to make it run worse. And so being on a carnivore diet, being on a ketogenic diet, having high ketones, allowing your brain to run on its optimal fuel source, it's going to give his brain its maximal potential for, utility, right? So, whatever his brain can do, it's going to be able to do that. And, that's all we can really hope for sometimes.
All right. You guys are just awesome. Can't wait for the film. The rest of the world needs to hear this. Yeah, if anyone wants to participate, the link's below, carnivoredietmovie.com. And then we have, I was going to say we have one more. There's one more that just popped in there. Nitrates, bad in bacon. I found nitrate-free bacon, but it's in every processed meat here in Germany.
Well, the thing is too, with nitrate-free bacon or anything, you'll look in there and it'll say like, celery powder or something like that. The reason there's celery powder in there is because there are more nitrates in celery than there is in bacon, right? So they put like this celery powder in there. There's just tons and tons and tons of nitrates in there. Another thing is too, that, something that Dr. Berry pointed out, you produce more nitrates in your saliva than you'll get in bacon. Right. And a lot of these studies looking at nitrates and nitrites and things like that, they were using doses that were way, way, way above anything you're going to find in, processed meats and things like that, like hundreds of times more, thousands of times more. Right. And we have hundreds of times more just in our saliva. So, something that someone said today, they thought that it might be something to do with, the nitrates and then how they process them and this, I don't know. I've never heard that before. But if you're just talking about if it's the same, stuff that's coming in our saliva, we have more of that in our saliva than in there. And if you find nitrate-free bacon, you'll look out for the celery powder because that has more nitrates in it. Now you can sometimes get naturally cured stuff and it doesn't have that sort of stuff, but yeah, it is difficult to find. The solution to that is just get pork bellies and just cook that yourself. It doesn't have that smoky, nice, salty flavor of bacon, but it's still pretty damn good. And it's not going to have any of that other added stuff that you don't want if you don't want it, if you're worried about it.
Yep. Emma and I did that about a month ago. We smoked up a pork belly. It was delicious. Put a little salt on it at the end.
Nice.
Yeah. Doc C is my guy. He's got muscles in his feet because he eats nothing but meat. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the last one, unless another one pops in here real quick. My dad is 75, has pains in his legs for the past 10 years or so, pains in his back for most of his life. Should he cut all grains, bread, and cereals?
Yeah, hard yes. Yeah, definitely. It can significantly help with pain, and also just with cognition and longevity. Right. So 75 years old, that's middle-aged, right? Does he feel middle-aged? I'm middle-aged. I don't feel middle-aged. I feel like I'm 20. I feel like at 43, I feel like I'm 23. I feel better at 43 than I did at 27, right? Because I feel like I did when I was 23, because my body's working the same way it did when I was 23. And so, except I know a lot more stuff now and I have more money. So that's good. And, but the thing is that this is really, really significant, especially for people in extremes of age. So kids, when they're developing, their brains and their bodies are developing, this is really important for them to be on proper nutrition. Also in extremes of age, when you're getting, later on in life, this is very, very important. You need proper nutrition. You need to avoid all those other things because it's harmful, and you don't have the same threshold and resilience that you did in your sort of your 20s. But that doesn't matter, because if you eat properly, if you eat what your body's designed to eat, then your body works properly. You don't need to You don't need to like push through and just, struggle along. Just don't eat crap. Just eat fatty meat, only drink water, and you'll be fine. His pain will improve dramatically. He'll put on muscle. His brain will start working better. His cognition will improve. His brain fog will go away. His sleep will improve. His energy will improve. He'll start being able to exercise more, which will then stimulate his brain even further and feel even better after that. So, this is something that I think is vitally important for all of us to get our, friends and relatives at all on this, but, especially ones that are getting older, have health issues, or people that have, kids, because this is going to help them more than anybody. And just more and more people that we can get on this and showing everybody around them, wow, look how great this is. Maybe I'll try it. They do really well. Someone else sees that. Wow, that's really great. Maybe I'll try it. This is how this spreads. And that's how this has been spreading for the last 20 years, right? And it's been very slow. You haven't heard about it until right now because it's only just starting to catch that exponential growth when people are just more and more people are hearing about it or talking about it, making channels like this. And then that's inspiring other people to make other channels and other channels and other channels. And that's where we're at now. So yes, 100%. I think you should definitely cut out all breads and cereals and all that sort of carbs and sugar and all that stuff, and then get rid of the rest of the plants after that. And certainly alcohol as well. And just meat and water. And if you can't do that, just a lot of fatty meat, no carbs, no sugar, nothing artificial. Get rid of beans, seeds, legumes, all that sort of stuff, and just have some salads with a lot of fatty meat. Don't do spinach every night. Spinach has buttloads of oxalates. You can deal with about 150 milligrams of oxalates a day. Half a cup of spinach has over 600 milligrams of oxalates, right? So we say, oh, well, are these things in the, in proportions and in the foods that we're eating? Yes, damn it. They are, and more so, So, I used to make spinach salads that were like, half a pound of spinach leaves, and like a whole chicken and things like that. I mean, Jesus, like what the hell was that doing to me? So, no, you don't want to eat any of that crap, but, see what you can do with them. Definitely get him eating a lot more and get him off all carbs, get him into a state of ketosis so his brain works better and his body works better. Get him carnivore if you can, and life will be good.
Yeah. I just interviewed a man, 78, went carnivore, just thriving. All these issues Pat mentioned, he's reversed. He's killing it. He feels so good. Charm Mom, New South Wales, Australia. Hello. Thank you. And then the last one, we got to the bottom. Sherry Q, $1. Thank you so much. Wow. That was a lot.
Well, thank you.
That was one of the longer ones, right, Dr. Chaffee?
That was long. That was definitely a longer one.
There's still almost 1,100 people here. Thank you so much, Dr. Chaffee. This has been great. You should go eat a steak now and get some sleep or something.
Yeah, it's pushing 2 a.m., so I should probably do that. And I haven't eaten yet, but that's fine. I still feel the same. It's all good.
Awesome. Yeah, I hate to not do the super chats, and we've never had this many before. They just kept coming in. It's like hard to keep up with them, but this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Again, anyone here from my channel, I highly encourage you, go check out Dr. Anthony Chaffee's channel. It's awesome what you're doing, and your podcast is great too.
Yeah. Well, and then everyone on my channel, go check out Homestead How. It's awesome. So a lot of homesteading videos, and as well as new carnivore sort of stuff. And Kerry and his family have been new carnivores, and they're having like amazing results. So it's very inspirational to anyone who's interested in the carnivore lifestyle, or interested in people that are or still sort of thinking about it, saying, okay, well, what are sort of the effects and benefits that people are having? This is a real life example of someone who started out with it and chronicled their progression and improvement, and has had amazing results. So you can see what your future looks like. Check out his stuff. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Thanks, everyone. Great to see everyone. Thank you so much. And thanks, Homesick Buck. I appreciate it for the movie. All right. Bye, everyone. Yeah. Thank you, sir.